Now the European Union looks set to copy it, and I am not surprised, by the way, in light of yesterday's devastating attack in France. More on that in a second, but bad news for the Labour Party. They've had to absolutely rip apart their flagship economic policy, their flagship green policy. What's going on? They're not even anywhere near power yet, and they're already flip-flopping all over the place. But yes, we're going over to France as well, and we are going to be talking, of course, as well about that knife horror astonishing video that's emerging from that I will be playing for you. But I've got to ask, if someone is rejected from seeking asylum or being a refugee, why the heck are they not put on a plane there and then and sent somewhere else? Because this is what happens if we don't do that. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm incensed about this. More on this throughout the show. But some uplifting news, anyway, because Anne Diamond is back. Yes, everybody. Anne, of course, will be back in the hot seat over there tomorrow for breakfast. Bless her. She's been incredibly brave as she's been battling with cancer. So Anne Diamond will be back tomorrow, a familiar face back on GB News. Patrick Christys on GB News. I'll see you in a tick. OK, welcome aboard. So we are going to be hearing live from Rishi Sunak as well this hour, and we're also going to be expecting footage live from the scene in France. I'm going to be asking you what you think about this issue. If people are refused asylum or refuge in a country, should they be immediately deported for the sake of keeping everybody safe? GB Views at gbnews.com. Now, though, it's your headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 3. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. French President Emmanuel Macron is in Annecy, where a knife attack took place yesterday. He's been thanking the emergency responders first to the scene at a playground in the Alpine city. Earlier, he met victims of the attack being treated in hospital, including an injured British girl. 3-year-old Etty was one of the 4 toddlers stabbed. She's now said to be in a stable condition. The knifeman, a Syrian refugee, had been denied asylum in the country just days before the attack in the city. 2 adults were also injured. One of them was 78-year-old Yusuf.
I was sat on the bench. Suddenly, he stood in front of me and tried to stab me with his knife, and I made a movement with my left arm to try and avoid the blow. Fortunately, I was only injured slightly. He was being followed by civilians, so he ran away to the left. He attacked other people, I think, and was caught by the police.
Former US President Donald Trump has been indicted on charges of retaining classified documents at his Florida estate. A source close to the case says he faces 7 charges. This is the second time Trump has been indicted. He's the first former US president to face criminal charges on a federal level. Posting on his social media platform, Trump has accused the government of election interference. He's campaigning to make a return to the White House in 2024.
Our country is going to hell, and they come after Donald Trump, weaponizing the Justice Department, weaponizing the FBI. We can't let this continue to go on because it's ripping our country to shreds. We have such big problems, and this shouldn't be one of them. It's a hoax.
Back here, Shadow Minister Bambos Charalambos has been suspended as a Labour MP after a complaint about his conduct. He says he'll cooperate fully with the investigation into the allegation. The Enfield Southgate MP tweeted, "It's right and proper that process is allowed to take place." Labour has yet to comment. Russia's president has announced it'll deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus as early as next month. Vladimir Putin held talks with his Belarusian counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko, in Sochi this afternoon. The pair had previously agreed to plans to store Russian nuclear missiles in Belarus. They've now agreed to a date, saying the move will go ahead the first week of July. The missiles will remain under Russian command. Back here, a 16-year-old boy has been arrested after 2 students were seriously injured at a private school in Devon. Police were called to Blundell School in Tiverton at around 1 this morning. 3 people, including 2 students, had been assaulted and sustained multiple serious injuries. A teenager has been arrested on suspicion of 3 counts of causing grievous bodily harm and with intent and remains in police custody. A teenage boy who died after being followed by police on his e-bike and then collided with an ambulance has been named locally as Saul Cookson. Greater Manchester Police said traffic officers had been following the 15-year-old yesterday in Salford until their car was blocked by bollards. The force said the collision between the bike and ambulance happened a short time later. The incident has been referred to a police watchdog. The Prime Minister is set to make a speech in Doncaster to reassure the government's commitment to levelling up. Pledges addressing a conference of Conservatives in the next few minutes. Rishi Sunak's expected to urge ministers not to backtrack on the agenda pioneered by Boris Johnson. Mr Sunak will say the government continues to double down on devolution and make sure the North continues to remain in the spotlight. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has abandoned Labour's commitment to spending £28 billion a year on a green prosperity plan. Instead, she says the party will gradually increase spending over the course of Parliament. Ms Reeves explained economic circumstances have changed since the announcement 2 years ago, saying Labour now wants to commit to spending only what's needed. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back over to Patrick.
Just a few hours after a failed Syrian asylum seeker stabbed 4 young children in France, talk of sending migrants to Rwanda was back on the agenda. But it wasn't Conservative MPs here who were promoting the idea, no. It was German politicians. And Suella Braverman visited Rwanda in April, and the government is still determined to send asylum seekers to the African country. That plan was thwarted last year by the European Court of Human Rights. But now Germany reportedly wants the EU to copy the UK's policy. What they're doing is pretending to have wrestled with this idea long and hard and say, oh, it's such a difficult decision for Germany, this. It's such a difficult thing. We've been racking our conscience. No, you want border security. This is a deterrent, and that's why you're doing it. And actually, they probably feel a bit silly for trying to stop us from doing it now as well. But it's said that Rwanda and Niger could be used to house migrants while their asylum claims are processed. And it is arguably more vital than ever before. We have seen a string of failed asylum seekers in this country go on to commit atrocities. Yesterday in France, we saw something similar, and that story could have been, and may well go on to be, even worse. Fingers crossed the children involved, the toddlers involved, continue to get better. But why are people who enter a country illegally, refused asylum, not just immediately deported? Neil Parish was an MEP for 10 years before he became an MP, and he joins me now. Look, first things first, I think Germany adopting some kind of Rwanda migrant scheme makes it more likely that we're going to be able to do it as well, because surely the ECHR aren't just going to keep knocking back every single European country that says they want to do it.
I think that is true, Patrick. I also think what is fascinating about the German situation is that, you know, you've got the Social Democrats, the SPD in Germany, who are now driving a policy of actually going to Nigeria or to Rwanda with migrants. Now, you know, the Christian Democrats were reportedly lastly, you know, they are the Conservative Party in Germany, largely lost the last general election, possibly over part to do with immigration, because Angela Merkel had let, you know, about 1 million people into Germany. Of course, when the economy was thriving, the economy is no longer thriving in Germany. So the whole thing is interesting. It's both the left and the right of politics. But of course, the SPD have also got a problem with their Green coalition partners who don't particularly want this policy at the moment. But I think you're right to say that the whole of Europe, you know, is absolutely worried about the number of people coming in and the potential of what they might do. And of course, the trouble is with a lot of these countries, you can't repatriate them because because you haven't got agreement to be able to do that. And so therefore looking for a third country to be able to deport people to, and either, if they're being deported or if their asylum has not been processed, is got to be right, in my view. So, from my point of view, the politics of this is absolutely fascinating, because the left and the right of politics all know that people in the countries of Europe, including Britain, of course, are very concerned about migration.
They're very concerned about migration. They're also incredibly concerned about national security and the security of, in the case of what we saw in France, which I'm going to go on and talk about a bit later on, Neil, the safety of young children. And if public safety is being compromised to be sacrificed at the altar of not wanting to cause any offence or not wanting to maybe disadvantage certain people who shouldn't really be in a country to begin with, then I don't think people are going to accept that for much longer. Why should someone who's been refused asylum or refuge status be allowed to stay a minute in a country beyond their refusal? Because it's just going to continue to cause anger and resentment, and then, lo and behold, someone picks up a knife and tries to kill kids.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right, Patrick. I mean, killing anybody is bad, but attacking children is particularly horrible. And so, I mean, people are bound to be concerned. The problem, like I said, I will reiterate, is that if you're absolutely right, they should be deported immediately, but you've got to have somewhere to deport them to. And if you can't deport them back to their own country because they won't have them back, then you've got to have a third country to be able to deport them to. But because I think people are concerned about security. I also think, putting the other side of the argument too, is you've got a lot of legitimate people who may be wanting to claim asylum, wanting to come here for legitimate reasons. It also puts them in a terrible position, because you have got these people that should not be here, should not be in France, should not be in Germany, should not be in Britain. And so therefore, what it does show too is that Europe does need to cooperate much more with us, instead of, in the United Kingdom, instead of trying to isolate us now that we've left the EU. And I think that is wrong. And I think we do all need to work together, because it is a European problem, and it's a British problem as well, because of people that are coming across the channel, having come a lot of the time all the way up through Europe before they actually cross the channel. So, I think let's sort of sit down and get an agreement so that we all
they've copied
feel
us. They've copied us, and I hope now this paves the way for this to actually happen, because people like to say in this country that Britain is an outlier. Like, if we pulled out the ECHR, go, only Belarus and Russia do that. Well, yeah, all right, OK, but I mean, Canada's not in the ECHR, and they're pretty lovely and fluffy when it comes to human rights. And they go, look at us, we're sending people off to Rwanda. What a horrible little hellhole of a country we are. Oh, the Germans are doing it, are they? Oh, well, that's...
I think...
Well, if the Germans are doing it, then that's probably OK. So, actually, in a way, we should be thanking the Germans now.
I think, Patrick, you're right. I think what happens with politics, and especially political correctness, is that when everything is going fine, everybody wants to be politically correct. When there is a problem, when people really, of all voters, of all persuasions, are really concerned about national security, really concerned about the levels of immigration, then all of a sudden, all the political parties, they lose their political correctness and decide to have some action. And so where I couldn't agree with you more is I think the German situation is making it fascinating, and I think let's actually see if we can actually get now some really much stronger policies for Britain and also the rest.
But we're less of an outlier, and that's vital now, Neil.
Let's get to Britain, that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is an absolutely vital moment for Britain, OK, because we can now officially say, look, if this policy was so evil and wrong, then why is everybody else trying to copy it? Actually, this is the right thing. The problem is so big. Look at what's just happened in France. Look at the catalogue of incidents that we've had over here with failed asylum seekers. The Liverpool Maternity Hospital, if that had gone slightly differently, we would have been reporting there on an absolutely devastating case involving, yet again, infants. So I think it's worthwhile bearing that in mind when it comes to border security. Neil, thank you very much. Neil Parish there, of course, former MEP before he became an MP. You get loads more on this story on our website. It's a bit of a collection of stories, that, OK, because you have got the Rwanda side of things, what's going on in Germany. They're looking to try to copy it as well, and we'll call as well for the European Union to do that. And in light of what's been going on in France, just going to go to the inbox quickly. I was asking, should people who are refused asylum/refugee status in a country be immediately deported? I can see no benefit whatsoever of keeping people who are massively disillusioned, very angry, and quite literally have nothing to lose in your country once you've told them that they can't stay there. Fred says, afternoon, love the show, fully agree that once someone is refused permission for refuge or asylum, they should be detained and removed to their place of origin. GBviews at gbnews.com. Go to our website as well, gbnews.com. It is the fastest growing national website in the country. It's got the best analysis and opinion, as well as all the latest breaking news. But in just a few moments, we will hear from Rishi Sunak as he outlines the Tories' plans to keep seats in the Red Wall at the next election. I had a cracking day yesterday, of course. I was out and about in Sutton and Ashfield with Lee Anderson and getting to know the Red Wall a little bit better. But Labour's main economic policy is in absolute tatters. They've ditched their £28 billion green prosperity plan. It is yet another Keir Starmer U-turn. What on earth is going on? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, so welcome back. Now, in a few minutes, we will hear live from Rishi Sunak as he outlines his plans for the north of England. And there's big news about Donald Trump as his claim that he could be jailed for 100 years, which is absolutely staggering. But now to news that we broke in the last hour. Labour Shadow Minister Bambos Sharambulos has been suspended by the party after a complaint about his conduct. A formal complaint against the Enfield Southgate MP was made to Labour's independent process. Mr. Charalambos said that he will cooperate fully with the review. Let's speak now to GB News' political reporter, Catherine Forster. Catherine, thank you very much. What's the latest, please?
Yeah, so as you said, we've had the news in the last hour that the Shadow Foreign Office Minister, Bambos Charalambos, has been suspended.
Catherine, sorry
from the
to
Labour
interrupt
Party.
you straight away.
Pending...
Sorry to interrupt you straight away. We'll go back.
No
We've got Rishi Sunak, I believe, who is, of course, talking now about how they're going to sort out the north of England with his policies. I believe we can go to take a little bit of Rishi Sunak now.
You, Peter, you're a fantastic champion for Darlington, something that I see firsthand. And Peter's absolute proof of what difference a committed local MP can make to their area. But as Peter said, I have come overnight from Washington, where I was talking to President Biden about how we ensure not just our national security, but our economic security as well in the coming decades. And on the flight back last night, I was reflecting on just how much of this security is dependent on the North. It is the North of our country that is at the heart of our plan for energy security. Carbon capture and storage in Teesside, offshore wind in Humberside, and the next generation of nuclear power, small modular reactors, could have their home in Cumbria. It is the North that is also helping to ensure that we have the critical supplies we need for the modern economy. The first large-scale lithium refinery anywhere outside of Asia is being built in Teesside. And in East Yorkshire, they're constructing the second largest magnets material refinery outside China. Now, these developments will help ensure that the future is bright for our auto industry. And it is the North that so much of our vital defence manufacturing happens. Our future combat air system is being developed in Lancashire, and our new AUKUS submarines will be built in Barrow. There they are. Now, this is all proof of what our fantastic chair, John Stevenson, says: a stronger North means a stronger Britain. And this is a government and a party that is absolutely committed to John's vision and indeed the North. Now, we know that our majority runs through the North and that there is no route to electoral success without you. Now, I know some of you have said we should have a minister for the North, but I am a Prime Minister for the North. Sitting for a North Yorkshire constituency, going home when I can to Northallerton, I understand the unique challenges that the North faces, and this government will help to address them and deliver on the promise of our 2019 manifesto. Now, I believe in a fair deal for the North. When I was at the Treasury as Chancellor, I pushed through changes to the Green Book rules, which govern capital investment, to make sure that the North got the funding that it deserved. And this government is meeting the infrastructure needs of the North as we speak. And I'm proud that our £96 billion integrated rail plan, the largest single investment in rail ever made by a UK government, will give the North the connectivity the South has long taken for granted. Now, Labour's vision of the North is a narrow one. When Keir Starmer thinks of the North, if he thinks of it at all, he thinks only of the big cities: Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle. Now, my view of the North extends far beyond that. I want us to stand for every part of the North, for the towns and the villages, as well as the great urban centres. Now, as Chancellor, I decided to open up an economic campus in the North, but I didn't want to put it in a big city. I wanted to use it to put on the map the towns that are too often forgotten. So we set up the Treasury Economic Campus in Darlington, and it has been, as Peter will tell you, and a report out just today confirms, a great success. We now also have a Prime Minister's office there, and I work out of there on a regular basis. And trust me, if you want to change how Whitehall thinks about a place, send the Prime Minister there every month. Darlington is now at the heart of our government's decision-making. And it isn't just officials and ministers making the journey up there. The other day, I saw Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, there. That is head of one of the world's biggest companies, seeing what this part of the world has to offer. And through the Towns Fund, we've been able to support many other great places. 45 towns in the north have received a total of over £1 billion of funding to help them regenerate and revitalise. Now that is levelling up in action. I want thriving towns. I want a country where you do not have to leave the place that you love in order to succeed. Now, I get that things aren't easy right now. Our economy has been hit by 2 successive shocks, COVID and the energy price spike caused by Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And as we did during the pandemic, we are supporting people. We've paid half of households' energy bills this winter, funded by a levy on the windfall profits of energy companies. We're delivering £94 billion of cost of living support. We've kept fuel duty frozen, as we have done for the last 13 years, because we know how important the ability to get around is. Unlike our opponents, we won't try and tax people off the roads. And unlike the Labour government in Wales, we won't be stopping building roads either. Now, I've told Cabinet that I want them to focus relentlessly on delivery. I know that many voters here lent us their vote. They decided that after generations of being let down by Labour, they deserved something better. And they were right. And we must show them that we are worthy of their trust and support by delivering for them. Now, I've focused the government on 5 priorities because they are what will make the most difference to people's lives. And that is why they are the people's priorities. I want to halve inflation because inflation is the enemy that makes everyone poorer. It drives up prices. It erodes savings. And any tax cut or spending commitment we make will quickly be outpaced by inflation unless we get it under control. Now, inflation is starting to fall, but we will only succeed in halving inflation if we continue to be disciplined. And that is why we cannot and will not agree to inflation-busting pay rises in the public sector. Halving inflation remains the single most important and effective policy goal to help people with the cost of living and sustainably increase living standards. Now, we've averted the predicted recession, but my ambition goes far beyond that. We need to grow the economy, and I want the North to be at the heart of our economic growth. We will use our post-Brexit freedoms to create the most pro-innovation and pro-enterprise regulatory system on earth. And that will help us as we step up our efforts to attract businesses from around the world. From Japan last month, we brought home £18 billion of investment, and in DC this week, £14 billion of new American investment into our country secured, jobs created. And as we did with the super deduction, I want to use our tax system to encourage companies to invest here. The full expensing for capital that the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced in the budget is akin to a £9 billion tax cut for industry. It will increase business investment by 3% every year. No European country other than us has full expensing, and no advanced economy anywhere in the world has a more generous capital allowance system than us. This is a government that is determined to back our great manufacturing businesses, many of them benefiting right here in the North. And we will get our debt down, as we must, to make sure that our public finances are sustainable. We will cut waiting lists, because it's wrong that people have to wait so long for treatment that they need and deserve. And we will use every tool at our disposal to do this. More doctors, more nurses, more community diagnostic centres, more surgical hubs, more choice for patients, and more virtual wards. And finally, we will stop the boats. Now, Keir Starmer calls our efforts to do this immoral. But I'll tell you what's immoral. Allowing a situation to continue where young children are being put on makeshift, unseaworthy craft and being sent into one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth. It's immoral that criminal gangs, not your government, can get to decide who comes into our country. And I won't let this stand. That is why, in the teeth of Labour opposition, we are changing the law so that if you come here illegally, you will be detained and removed. Now, some say this will make no difference, that the small boats are just a fact of 21st century life. I totally reject that pessimism. And we're already showing that deterrence works, and that if people know that if they come here illegally, they don't get to stay, they stop coming. Just look at how the number of Albanian small boat arrivals has fallen by almost 90% following our returns deal. It shows that with grip and determination, we can get on top of this problem. Now, the point of being in government is to make life better for people. That's what matters. Now, I know that our opponents want to drag us down rabbit holes into old arguments, to distract us by trying to turn politics back into a soap opera. But we must resist that temptation because the stakes are too high. Now, Sir Softy might not be Jeremy Corbyn, but we should be in no doubt about the dangers that a Labour government poses. Do you think for 1 second that a Starmer administration would be prioritising tackling illegal migration, delivering on post-Brexit opportunities in trade and technology? Of course not. I mean, the opposite, in fact. Now, things are tough right now. People are frustrated. But I know they are willing to give us the credit if and when we get results. Because that's what they want most, above party politics, is to believe that politicians can still get things done, that government can actually work for them, not just indulge itself. Now, if we can keep our focus and our unity, I promise you, we can and we will win. Now, I know you've been talking about the manifesto and what you want to see us achieve in the next 5 years. Now, there will be plenty of conversations to come about that, but I can tell you today that I want our manifesto to offer a distinctly conservative vision. I want it to reflect that we are proud of our nation. We support the institutions that make it great, from the royal family to every family. We want to allow people to take back control of their lives. We are the party that believes that the individual makes better choices about their own life than the state. We know that the person in Whitehall doesn't know best. Our manifesto will reaffirm that we are the party with the energy and the ideas to change Britain. Now, Keir Starmer, by contrast, doesn't have any ideas. But don't take my word for it, take his. Last year, he signed an £18,000 deal to write a book about his vision for Britain, his ideas to make the country better. You know what? This year, he decided he needed to pay back the £18,000 because he couldn't work out what to put in the book. Turns out his vision for Britain literally is a blank sheet of paper. And when Labour do come out with ideas, they are very bad ones. Just look at their most recent proposal to ban drilling in the North Sea. It's a decision that puts ideology above jobs, above investment, above energy security. And think about it, they don't want to ban all oil and gas, they just want to ban British oil and gas. I mean, Labour's plan would make us dependent on dictators and autocrats, and it tells you all you need to know about Keir Starmer's judgment. A Starmer government would be a disaster for Britain and for the North, and we owe it to the country to not let that happen. Now, I know the secure future that we want. It is one in which every part of the UK helps drive forward growth. One where people feel pride in their community and their country. One where opportunity is spread right across this great nation of ours. So let's come together. Let's create that better future, one in which the North achieves its full economic potential. Let's build that stronger Britain, and let's build that stronger North, and let's do it together. Thank you.
Well, there we go there. That is Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, just having that conversation in Doncaster about being a Prime Minister for the North. OK? And he was talking about the economic prosperity of the North, trying to bolster the northern outlook and the economy as well. He was also having quite barbed digs, really, at Keir Starmer, who he regularly referred to as Sir Softy, and he was saying that whenever Labour do have good ideas, have ideas, they're never good ideas, such as what's been going on by stopping no new oil and gas as well. Let's get more, because there is loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. But I'm going to go to Catherine Forster, I believe. Oh, no, unfortunately, I can't go quite to Catherine Forster yet, but I will go to our political reporter, Catherine Forster, very shortly. But as Donald Trump is charged again, I will ask whether he has put the United States' national security at risk. And we'll get more on that horrifying knife attack on young children in France yesterday. And just on that, I am having the big conversation today. I want to hear from you. Loads of you have been getting in touch so far, gbviews@gbnews.com, which is if somebody is refused asylum or refugee status, should they not just be deported immediately? At the very least, sent to a third country, because what happens is people get disillusioned, they get aggressive, they get disheartened, and they've got nothing to lose because they know that they're not going to be allowed to stay there anymore. And this is the kind of incident that you see, isn't it? Someone running around with a knife, stabbing kids. And it's not the only one like it. We have had incidents like that here. But yes, the Labour Party announced a major U-turn as well on their planned £28 billion a year investment into green industries should they win the election. But Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, as well, says the Conservatives have crushed the economy, refuses to commit to new spending figures until the next financial statement. Joining me is Liam Halligan, who is our economics and business editor. And he's going to be talking to me about this with On the Money. So, Liam, what's going on?
Well, it's really interesting what's happening in energy policy, Patrick. You've got the Tories, they're saying to the North Sea oil companies, oh, you know that windfall tax that we've imposed on you, 75% of your profits? We're actually going to make it a little bit easier for you, so when the oil price falls below a certain level, we won't impose that windfall tax. It will go back to just a super tax of 40% on your profits, rather than the 25% that all other companies pay. So that's interesting. And then you've got Rachel Reeves on the other side. Back in 2021, she announced at Labour conference that Labour were going to be, she was going to be the first Green Chancellor. She wasn't going to dress up as a leprechaun or something like that. She was going to launch a bunch of green measures amounting to £28 billion a year. That's a huge amount of money. That's like 5p on the basic rate of income tax, an absolutely massive amount of money. And now she's saying, because the Tories messed up the economy, because of the Truss Kwarteng mini-budget, because financial markets are in turmoil, Labour aren't going to pledge that £28 billion a year on green measures immediately. They're going to do it over the course of the next Parliament if they're the government.
But that was a key cornerstone of their economic vision and green vision as well, and now they've just shredded it.
They have. I wouldn't say they've shredded it. They've just said that they're going to attack it at a more or a less ambitious pace. At a more, she's trying to dress it up as, look, we're doing this because we're responsible. We can't afford to borrow all the money in order to do all this spending on green jobs, so net zero transition and so on, because the Tories have messed up the public finances. So she's trying to suggest, you know, when the likes of Caroline Lucas and other Green politicians and the net zero gang say, oh, Labour are going all, you know, they're going back to being more corporate, they're not committed to this green stuff. Rachel Reeves is saying, no, we are, but we just can't afford it as quickly as we thought we would be able to afford it.
Any news from Dale Vince on this? I mean, this guy, the Just Stop Oil guy, has been helping to fund Labour, hasn't he? As well as holding up traffic around London. I bet he's not that happy, is he?
And this is the really interesting thing about Labour at the moment. On the one hand, they want to appeal to the likes of Dale Vince, the Green campaigner, the guy who's made a huge amount of money out of renewable energy. He's now saying he's going to, or he's not denying, he's going to drop £5 million on the Labour Party between now and the general election expected next year in order to help them campaign on a more level financial playing field with the Tories. On the other hand, the Labour Party are getting hammered by the likes of the GMB union, by the likes of the Unite union, two of the three biggest unions in this country, who are furious that Labour are saying that they're going to ban all North Sea oil and gas investments if they get into power. And that's going to cost lots and lots of jobs. 200,000 people, Patrick, are employed across the UK oil and gas sector, focused on the North Sea.
It's nonsensical because it costs jobs, it angers the unions. It also just means that we are, as Rishi Sunak just said there, we are not going to be banning oil and gas. It's banning British oil and gas. So you're going to go around to some of the world's most dangerous dictators and go, here's even more money.
Even Labour leader Keir Starmer, when he addressed the GMB union, they had a conference in Brighton on Monday this week, he went to address them because they were so angry. These are core Labour funders, the GMB, the Unite Union, but maybe Starmer's thinking, oh, now we've got our nice, shiny new money from the Green Man, Dale Vince, as you said. But he went to address the GMB union, Keir Starmer, and he said to them himself, oh, don't worry, I understand that we're going to be using oil and gas, quotes, far, far into the future. Well, if we're going to be using oil and gas far, far into the future, the late 2030s, according to the government's own climate change committee, why stop British companies or British-based companies producing that oil and gas? Because if you import the oil and gas, the carbon footprint for the imports is even bigger.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. So, like a lot of opposition politicians, or politicians generally, you could say, he's speaking out two sides of his mouth at once, as my old mum would say, because he's telling all the kind of right-on Labour supporters in the university towns, the graduate class, oh, we're going to be really, really green. And then he's telling the GMB people, oh, but don't worry, we're going to carry on with lots of oil and gas.
In the same day, saying two different things to two different people, really. I just wondered whether or not, because Aberdeen is a big area for oil and gas, isn't it? And
it's the oil and gas capital of Europe.
And that is traditionally Conservative voting. And I wondered whether or not he thought, I can take a hit here because they're not voting for me anyway.
But having said that, Scottish people know where their bread is buttered, and the Scottish oil industry is, the oil and gas industry is crucial to the Scottish economy. He needs Scotland if he's going to form a majority at Westminster. So what's really interesting to me is, until before the war in Ukraine, oil and gas policy, energy policy, it really was the preserve of nerds like me. We wouldn't really be talking about it much on daytime television. We might talk about the petrol price or fuel duty from time to time. But now we're seeing huge shifts in oil and gas policy and energy policy in general. The Tories just today watering down their windfall tax. Labour just today saying they can't make as many green investments as they thought they were going to make. Labour this week getting hammered by two of the three biggest unions in this country. All this is as a result of the real focus on energy policy, on the cost of living squeeze, on sky-high fuel and heating bills, in the aftermath of the war in Ukraine. That conflict has changed British politics. It's changed politics across the world.
Absolutely, Liam. Thank you very, very much. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. I've got a lot coming your way between now and the end of this hour. It is an action-packed hour. I'm going to be talking about Donald Trump because he's facing 7 charges now, including an espionage charge, which is staggering, and what this may or may not mean for the amount of time he could spend in prison. He's saying it's a witch hunt. What do you make of it all? I am also going to be turning my attention back to France, the deplorable attack there. I'm going to be discussing all of that and asking the very simple question, which is whether or not we should be just deporting people straight away if they are refused asylum or refugee status. Why would you keep someone in your country who is disillusioned, who is unhappy, who doesn't have anything to lose? We've seen it in Liverpool with the maternity hospital attempted bombing. We've seen it with the Parsons Green bomber, and now France have seen it as well. How much blood has to be shed before people get their backsides in gear? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
OK, so welcome back. And at 4 o'clock, I will tell you why Germany wants to copy our plan and send migrants to Rwanda. And shortly, I'm going to be having a discussion about whether or not we should just deport people straight away if they are not granted asylum. Why keep them hanging around just to, frankly, start committing atrocities? But let's get back to a story that we spoke about a little earlier this hour. The Prime Minister has got something going on. Labour Shadow Minister Bambos Charalambos has been suspended by the party after a complaint about his conduct. A formal complaint against the Enfield Southgate MP was made to Labour's independent complaints process. Mr Charalambos said that he will cooperate fully with the review. Catherine Forster joins me now, I believe, GB News' political reporter. Catherine, thank you. Sorry to cut you off earlier on there, but we had the Prime Minister going on. What is the latest now then, please?
Yes, so Bambos Charalambos becomes the latest in a succession of MPs to be suspended from their parties. He was the Labour MP for Enfield and Southgate since 2017. He served as a shadow Foreign Office minister, but as of today, there's been a formal complaint put in against him. We don't know exactly what the complaint is, but as part of the Labour process, he has been immediately suspended and he has lost the whip, so he will continue to sit in Parliament as an MP. And he joins a growing band. By my calculations, there's now 16 MPs sitting in Parliament as independents who've lost the whip. They've been suspended from their parties. I make just over half a dozen Labour, just over half a dozen Conservative, 1 SNP, and for a range of reasons, including sexual harassment, inappropriate lobbying, Matt Hancock, of course, going into the jungle. Some of them we don't know exactly what the allegations are, but certainly a really terrible look for Westminster that now is the biggest group of MPs after Conservatives, Labour and the SNP is not the Liberal Democrats who've got 14 MPs, but the independents who, through various misdemeanours or accusations made against them, are now 16 MPs in total.
Yeah, it is quite staggering that to realise that there's more people who've essentially been kicked out of their own parties than there are Lib Dems. But there we go. Catherine, thank you. Catherine Forster, GB News' political reporter. We'll keep our eyes and ears on that for you as well and any updates. But now to more bad news for Donald Trump, who's facing more criminal charges. Trump has been indicted for retaining classified government documents and obstruction of justice. He was already due to go on trial next March on an unrelated matter. Trump, of course, says it's a hoax.
This is warfare for the law, and we can't let it happen. We can't let it happen. Our country is going to hell, and they come after Donald Trump, weaponizing the Justice Department, weaponizing the FBI. We can't let this continue to go on because it's ripping our country to shreds. We have such big problems, and this shouldn't be one of them. It's a hoax.
Well, there we go. That's Donald Trump there. I am joined now by GBNews security editor Mark White. Mark, very serious for Trump, this.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a federal grand jury indictment, 7 charges that he's facing. Those charges have not been revealed yet. They will be revealed in court in Miami this coming Tuesday, but it's understood, according to news outlets in the States, that one of the charges includes espionage. So it's very serious on the scale of what the former president is facing. It's perhaps worth just recapping on how these events came to light. So we had for some time the National Archives trying to get a hold of dozens of documents, hundreds of documents that they said were missing. After some considerable time and wrangling between Donald Trump's officials in the National Archives, those officials handed over 15 boxes to the National Archives in January of last year. Now, they looked through these boxes and discovered that there was 184 documents that were classified documents, including some that are described as top secret. At that point, the FBI was called in by the Justice Department. It carried out its own investigation, and witness statements that they gathered, plus CCTV of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago complex in Miami, showed that apparently, according to the FBI, there was some attempts to move some of these documents about. So there was a raid that took place in August of last year by the FBI, seized more boxes. This whole issue was then handed over by Merrick Garland, who is the Attorney General, to a special counsel. That special counsel has been investigating, and this is the upshot. The special counsel has convened a grand jury, and 7 counts, criminal charges, have been laid or will formally be laid against President Trump on Tuesday of next week.
OK, and the ultimate upshot of this will be him appearing in court with a grand jury, and he could face 100 years in prison.
Well, yeah, I mean, he could.
It's just a bit mental, isn't it, really? The idea that it could happen.
We've heard from...
But is this one of those ones where you read the headline and it's like, well, he could face it, yeah, but in reality...
He'll face 6 months.
Yeah.
Could well be that. So you've heard from him very quickly. Yeah. He's out there very publicly on Truth Social, the social network that he set up, putting out these videos saying that, look, this is all a political stitch-up. His son, Donald Trump Jr., has been saying the same, as have members of the Republican Party. Yeah. It comes, of course, in the wake of another prosecution by, this time, a district prosecutor in New York who has decided to bring charges in a court case against the former president over a supposed cover-up of payments he made to the former porn actress Stormy Daniels. So he's been done this time on issues around his business practices and the way in which those payments were entered into his sort of tax and business documents. So that's how they're going to try and get him on that. He goes on trial in March of next year, and that, don't forget, next year at the back end are the presidential elections.
And this is something to keep an eye on because, you know, actually, seriously, it might do him more favours than not with his base. But, Mark, thank you very, very much. Now, the next time I talk to you, I'm going to be talking about what's been happening in France, because I'm having a big discussion about whether or not, if people are found not to be eligible for asylum or refugee status in a country, why on earth do we keep them there? It is an accident waiting to happen. These people have nothing to lose. They'll probably be absolutely livid. And then, lo and behold, you end up with a situation like we've had over here, as we were talking about
multiple cases.
Liverpool, Parsons Green bombing.
Reading attack.
Yes, indeed, where people have been, obviously... found to not have a case for asylum and refugee status, etc., then they go on and commit absolute atrocities, and this is what's happening in France. So there we are. Right, so I'm just going to bring you a little bit of breaking news that's just dropped to us now as well. Nadine Dorries will stand down as an MP immediately. She said, she said on Twitter, "I have today informed the Chief Whip that I am standing down as the MP for Mid-Bedfordshire with immediate effect. It has been an honour to serve as the MP for such a wonderful constituency, but it is now time for someone younger to take the reins." Now, that is actually fascinating because it comes off the back of Boris Johnson's honours list situation where, supposedly, anyway, Nadine Dorries may well have been taken off that honours list, which is fascinating because if indeed she was properly on it and then she's been taken off and then the day now happens where she goes, "I'm resigning with immediate effect," one would have to assume that maybe they are connected. It is a breaking news story. We'll have more on that as and when we get it. But yes, the government was criticised when it revealed its Rwanda plan initially, but guess what? Now Germany wants to copy it. In light of what we saw yesterday in France, in light of what we've seen in this country numerous times now, in light of the fact that we are seeing record levels of illegal migration, the legal side of it, our population, by the way, is expected to, get this, exceed 80 million people by 2046. 80 million people. Is it not time that we now fully and properly controlled our borders, if only for national security? So Germany wants to copy our Rwanda plan. I think this could pave the way for those planes to take off, because the ECHR is not going to keep knocking back all of the European lovies who want to do this as well. I'm Patrick, Christys on GB News. We are Britain's news channel, GB Views at gbnews.com. Make sure you get your views coming in thick and fast. See you in a tick.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News. the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock, it's Patrick, Christys, it's GB News, and I've got loads coming your way. So, the European Union essentially wants to copy our Rwanda plan. Who thought it, hey? I'll be telling you exactly why I think this is good news for us over here in this country, for people who want to control their borders and get those flights to Rwanda taking off. In other news, yes, we're going to be talking a lot as well about another Labour U-turn. So, their flagship economic and green policy has just been completely shredded. I mean, they're nowhere near office yet, of course, but maybe they're going to have to start designing a policy that works at some point soon. We're also going to be talking a lot about this as well. Shocking new details emerging in this France knife attack. The Syrian refugee went on the rampage at a park with a knife, stabbed 4 toddlers, one of whom was British. But it is leading me to think now, should people who are refused asylum or refugee status be deported immediately to stop them doing things like this? And for people to say this would never happen here, it already has. Numerous cases very similar to this. I'll be talking about all of that. But some uplifting news to finish the hour. Yes, that's right. Anne Diamond is back, everybody. So we look forward to welcoming Anne back onto our screens tomorrow morning. Welcome back, Anne. Great to have you. See you in a sec. GBviews at gbnews.com is that email address. I want to hear from you about whether or not people who are refused asylum or refugee status should be immediately deported. I am amazed that it doesn't happen more often. What happened in France? We are leaving ourselves wide open to attacks like that. GBviews at gbnews.com. But it's your headlines now.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Former Cabinet Minister and close ally to Boris Johnson, Nadine Dorries, has announced she'll stand down as Conservative MP with immediate effect. In a statement on Twitter, she said she'd informed the Chief Whip she was stepping down as the representative for Mid Bedfordshire. It follows speculation over whether she'd appear on Boris Johnson's resignation honours list, due to be published imminently. We'll bring you more on that breaking story as we get it. The Prime Minister, meanwhile, says he wants the north of England to be at the heart of economic growth in the country. Addressing the Northern Research Group conference in Doncaster, Rishi Sunak said there's no route to success at the next election without the North. He also took aim at Sir Keir Starmer, warning the conference that a Labour government under Sir Softy would be a disaster for both Britain and the North. French President Emmanuel Macron is in Annecy, where a knife attack took place in a playground yesterday. Earlier, he met victims of the attack being treated in hospital, including an injured British girl. 3-year-old Etty was one of 4 toddlers stabbed. She's now said to be in a stable condition. The city's mayor says he's confident about the condition of the other 3 toddlers. 2 adults were also injured in the attack. The knifeman, a Syrian refugee, had been denied asylum in the country just days before the attack. Macron has praised the efforts of the emergency responders first to the scene.
En tant que président de la République, je suis très fier de vous.
As President, I am very proud of you, very proud of what has been done by fellow citizens who just happened to be there. Very proud of the place and the role that everyone played, yours and ours. You did your duty, but as you did your duty, you accomplished even more, and I'm extremely proud.
Former US President Donald Trump has been indicted on charges of retaining classified documents at his Florida estate. A source close to the case says he faces 7 charges. This is the second time Trump has been indicted. He's the first former US president to face criminal charges on a federal level. Posting on his social media platform, Truth Social, Trump has accused the government of election interference. He's campaigning to make a return to the White House in 2024.
Our country is going to hell, and they come after Donald Trump, weaponizing the Justice Department, weaponizing the FBI. We can't let this continue to go on because it's ripping our country to shreds. We have such big problems, and this shouldn't be one of them. It's a hoax.
And back here, Shadow Minister Bamos Charalambos has been suspended as a Labour MP after a complaint about his conduct. He says he will cooperate fully with the investigation into the allegation. The Enfield Southgate MP tweeted, "It's right and proper that process is allowed to take place." Labour has yet to comment. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. Let's head over back to Patrick.
OK, so we're going to be talking about Germany nicking our Rwanda plan in a moment, but we start with that big breaking news that broke just a few moments ago. Nadine Dorries is standing down as a Conservative MP with immediate effect. Let's speak now to our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who's at the Conservatives' Northern Research Group conference in Doncaster. Tom, what do you know?
Well, hello, Patrick. It's certainly a busy time for the Conservatives. Rishi Sunak has just flown back from DC, has just been here in Doncaster, and indeed, as they're tidying up this conference, the Conservatives will now need to be readying their hands for a by-election in mid-Bedfordshire. This is the seat that Nadine Dorries has represented for quite some time in Parliament, has been where she has been a constituency MP, as of course she has been a minister in many departments. She's been a health minister. She was of course Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport as well for some time. And now there is huge speculation mounting as to the timing of this honours list from Boris Johnson and whether or not this resignation from Nadine Dorries is because she is on that very honours list. The speculation, and I don't think it's all too wild speculation, is that Nadine Dorries MP is about to become Baroness Dorries in the House of Lords and is therefore resigning with immediate effect. That, of course, is unconfirmed. All we know that is confirmed so far is that Nadine Dorries has announced her resignation, and she sits on a pretty healthy majority there in mid-Bedfordshire of around 24,600 votes.
OK, fascinating. So, yes, she's resigned with immediate effect. A by-election will take place. There is a healthy Conservative majority, hopefully not too much to worry about for Rishi Sunak, but we will have to wait and... Oh, go on.
Patrick, you say that, but I think there's a very interesting piece of context here. If you remember to last year, 2022, and the Tiverton and Honiton by-election,
I think of Little
the Conservatives were defending a majority there. The Conservatives were defending a majority in Tiverton and Honiton of 24,600 votes. Now, that's almost precisely exactly the same as the majority of Nadine Dorries. Now, there are different local factors. Perhaps the Labour Party will fight harder in mid-Bedfordshire than they did in Tiverton and Honiton. Perhaps the opposition will be split. But I don't think anyone can take anything for granted in this upcoming by-election.
No, indeed. OK, well, Tom, thank you very much. And more information as we get it on this honours list stuff as well, whether or not Nadine Dorries is going to be Baroness Dorries now. Tom Harwood, thank you, our Deputy Political Editor. Now, just a few hours after a failed Syrian asylum seeker stabbed 4 young children in France, talk of sending migrants to Rwanda was back on the agenda. Surprise, surprise. But it wasn't the Conservative MPs over here who were promoting the idea. No, it was German politicians. They've woken up and seen the light and realised that maybe we actually had it right all along. Suella Braverman visited Rwanda in April, and the government is still determined to send asylum seekers to the African country. The plan was thwarted last year by the European Court of Human Rights, but now Germany reportedly wants the EU to copy the UK's policy. And it said that Rwanda and Niger could be used to house migrants whilst their asylum claims are being processed. I think this is a fascinating development that makes it more likely that we will be able to do it, more likely that the European Court of Human Rights can do one, frankly, and also more likely that claims right across Europe might actually be processed abroad, and therefore Europe's migrant crisis might just decrease. I am joined now by the wonderful former Brexit Party MEP and regular here at GB News, Belinda de Lucy. Belinda, thank you very, very much. It's a bad day, I think, this, for the Remainers, isn't it, who were revelling in the idea of Britain being this horrible little racist cesspit of a country, outsourcing its illegal immigration problems. What's that? The EU want to do it? It's a great idea.
Yes, of course. They're like, as long as the EU says it's possible and it's doable, then they'll love it. Their allegiance lies with the EU and not with the UK, sadly. I'm not surprised Germany have started to fling this idea around a bit. They've had a host of problems since Angela Merkel flung open their doors in August 2015 to the world. They've already had about 130,000 asylum claims already this year in Germany, and the right-wing party, the AfD in Germany, is on the rise. Europeans have had enough of incompetent European leaders who have had absolutely no control over the borders, where they won't address the issues of the Schengen area, and they're looking to the UK for inspiration. And I'm not surprised. Although I would say this, the Rwanda policy on paper and for headlines looks good, but even officials there have said the capacity is only a few hundred that they're able to take. And the real problem with Europe and the migrant crisis is the lax asylum process that they have. And the fact that even Frontex, actually, the border agency and Coast Guard data that they have in the EU, have said 4 million illegal migrants have entered the EU since 2008. This is a European problem, and unfortunately, 90% of between 70 and 90% of these are men, and many who don't have documents. So Germany needs to have a headline. But will it really deter migrants if we have such a high acceptance rate? Because remember, Germany is only sending people to Rwanda if they have no chance of having their asylum case granted, and if they've already lived in a similar area. So there is criteria, actually stricter criteria from Germany.
There is, but I suspect that it might pave the way now for other nations, and we'll start seeing more and more of this. Or France will pop up and say something, and Spain might, and Portugal, and then before you know it, you really do have these individual nations coming out en masse for something like a Rwanda policy. I think they were just waiting for Britain to be brave enough to make that call themselves. They were going to have a pop at it for a little bit. Be interesting to see the Archbishop of Canterbury having a massive pop at the Germans now, probably, and all of these lovies that are going to be lining up to take pot shots at them. But the fact is, Belinda, we need to be doing something like this, and we need to be doing something like this, especially in light of what happened in France yesterday. We've had the Parsons Green tube bomber here. That could have been much worse than it was. We've had the Liverpool Maternity Hospital bomber. That could have been much worse than it was as well. There was an attack in Reading that was abhorrent and disgusting, a murder that was awful. And now in France, we're seeing someone who was denied refuge, denied asylum, despite having already been granted it in Sweden, by the way, and decides to go on a rampage whilst clutching a crucifix, which I'm deeply sceptical about myself, I must say, and stabbing kids in a park. We have to be able to get people out of countries once they're refused asylum or refused refuge, because otherwise they pose an absolutely massive threat, don't they?
Absolutely, but the problem is, in the UK, for example, our acceptance rate for asylum seekers is up 46%. since 2016. We accept 75% of asylum claims compared to just around 30% in France. We accept twice the number the EU accept. And as Frans Timmermans said, the EU Commission Vice President, that 60% of those entering Europe are economic migrants. They are not genuine refugees. So why our acceptance rate is over 70%? It's down to Tory policy and, I mean, you could say anything. We don't even have to be here with documents. You can even be a criminal and you can have the right to stay here. And that is where the deterrent lies. Actually, not necessarily Rwanda, but having a much stricter definition of what a refugee is and to have documents. We need to know who these people are. You know, Patrick, Japan is a signatory of the Refugee Convention like we are. They accept less than 100 every year, bar their emergency Ukrainian acceptance rate. Less than 100 because they have a strict definition. We accept thousands upon thousands, and we cannot. This is unsustainable. So we have to start prioritizing. I think we should deny asylum claims for anyone who arrives here illegally straight away, and just go straight to the camp. So at least women and children have a chance.
I hope. Yeah, exactly. Where are they? That's what I want to know. I think, though, that we should really use what's going on in Germany and the EU now as an extra shot in the arm for our Rwanda plan and for others a bit like it. Just to reiterate, Germany apparently want the European Union to uphold some kind of scheme like the one that we're looking at doing with Rwanda, to offer a deterrent and to offer somewhere safe for people to go whilst they're being processed. Germany, fascinatingly now, has entered into a technical recession as well. So when Angela Merkel threw the doors open to around 1 million Syrian asylum seekers and people from goodness knows where else, and economic times were good, and it made amends for some rather fruity stuff that had happened in Germany some decades before it. Look at how nice and lovely we are. Well, actually, now your economy's in the toilet, and all of a sudden you're saying, well, actually, should we maybe move some of these people to Africa? But it's not just about the illegal side of things, Belinda, that I'd like to talk to you about, because I'm also reading a story here that is pretty stark, that the UK population is to hit 80 million people as immigration surges, and this is the legal side of it. So, at the moment, it would appear that there is no attempt whatsoever to conserve this country. We will allow people in who've been done for double murders abroad, pose as children, done for drug dealing offences abroad as well, and they can enter illegally and go to a school here and live with a foster family. That's fine. But we'll just let everyone else in as well, by the looks of things.
It's a massive betrayal, and I don't know what to say. I've got 4 teenage girls. I doubt they're ever going to be able to afford to get on the housing ladder. And what is really sad is it's actually putting off British families from having more children because they can't get a bigger house. And so the government keep allowing hundreds of thousands in, which make it even harder to get a bigger house, which is going to crush our population even more, which will mean our lazy politicians keep importing our workforce instead of investing in our domestic workforce. It's a total betrayal, not just to our public services, doctors, school appointments, but to also our cultural identity, our language, our history. You know, you cannot have rapid, aggressive, mass immigration, especially in a climate in this country, which, let's be honest, is certainly in schools and universities getting quite anti-British and a lot of anti-white rhetoric going on. And yet they want this sort of huge multicultural country without the consent of the people. It's also not fair on the legal migrants that are coming, that have come over in the past, and it's not fair on. It's not fair on the genuine refugees who deserve a place, but instead we're giving money to men chancing it from France, and it's not fair on the British taxpayer.
And they figured out, some people, back in terms of the channel crossings, by the way, have figured out a way of gaming the system. Now, it remains to be seen exactly what this individual has just gone on the rampage with a knife in France, what the reality is there, supposedly wearing a crucifix, shouting about being a Christian whilst he was committing this attack. Now, I obviously don't know the specific detail of that. Nobody does yet. We'll have to wait and see. But one thing that we do know has been happening a bit in this country is that people coming from countries in the Middle East where you could be persecuted for being a Christian are finding it remarkably easy to slip into a life of supposed Christianity in this country and then be able to use that to bolster some of their own asylum claims and to claims against being deported back and a reason why they will have to stay here because they will be persecuted. And actually, I can't help but wonder whether or not our church is complicit in that a little bit, Belinda.
I'm really sad about how political our church has got on the issue because, after all, it says in the Bible, charity begins at home, and actually public safety and security should be the priority for all our leaders. And once our country is able and willing and financially sound enough to offer help to others, we should do it. But think about this, Patrick. 70 countries around the world ban homosexuality. That means 70 countries around the world, their people can claim asylum in the UK and pretend to be gay because they don't need a lot of evidence. You've got 32 countries around the world in conflict at the moment. They'll all be eligible to claim asylum here. It is far too lax. Our case law makes it too easy. We should have a tier system where only those direct at threat of death are considered for asylum in this country. We have to stop it now because it's open to so much abuse. And let's be honest, we have to explore the connection between tens of thousands of undocumented men coming from violent, unstable, war-torn countries coming into Europe and their mental health. And this is what's not being discussed. As you've mentioned, the long list, the maternity bomber, the Parson Green bomber, the Reading murderer who killed 3 gay men, asylum seekers. Now, this is not to say the vast majority of asylum seekers are completely, welcome as long as the numbers are accepted by the people. But there is a dangerous element, and we need to make sure the British public are safe from that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Belinda, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this chat. Great to talk to you. It's Belinda de Lucy there, who's a fan favourite here on GB News, former Brexit Party MEP. If I am reading headlines today, like what's happened in France, similarly as well what's happened here in the past, I'm also looking at our population going to hit around the 80 million mark, 80 million people by 2046, which will be honours like that. I regularly report on the refugee crisis and the asylum seeker crisis and the fact that there could be around 80 million other people desperate to come to mainland Europe within the next 10 or 15 years. We can see all of this coming, can't we? We can see all of this coming, and yet we're not doing enough to actually put a deterrent in. It is now or never, really, but it looks as though, as you'll be seeing on the headlines on your screens there, where Britain has led the way on Rwanda, to much criticism, not least from people at the ECHR, it now looks as though Germany and the EU could well adopt something very, very similar. It will be fascinating to see whether or not people get so angry about it once the European Union copy us. But there's more on this story on our website, gbnews.com, which is the fastest-growing national news website in the country. Amazing stuff. It's got the best analysis and opinion, as well as all the latest breaking news. But get this, Labour's main economic policy is in tatters after they ditched their £28 billion green prosperity plan. Yes, it's another Keir Starmer U-turn. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. In a few minutes, I will have news of more problems for Donald Trump, but the Labour Party announced a major U-turn on their planned 28 billion quid a year investment into green industries, should they win the election. So, with Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves blaming the Tories for crashing the economy, yes, what's actually really going on? Joining me now to pick the bones out of this is Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor with On the Money. Some people are saying that they're not even anywhere near office yet, but their key flagship economic and green policy is in tatters.
Green policy, the transition to net zero, energy bills, the North Sea, oil and gas industry. These things are now really at the centre stage of British politics. They're usually what nerds like me talk about, but they are now front and centre, not least because of this cost of living squeeze, with higher energy bills, higher fuel bills when you're filling up your van and your car, on the minds of so many consumers and households now. What Labour have done is they announced back in 2021, Rachel Reeves said, I'm going to be the first Green Chancellor. We're going to have this £28 billion a year investment programme. How much is that? That's the equivalent of about 4 or 5p extra on the basic rate of income tax. It's big money.
Wow.
We're going to have this £28 billion a year green investment. We're going to generate green jobs. We're going to subsidise gigafactories being built, making the batteries for electric vehicles.
Yeah.
And Rachel Reeves is saying now, you know what? You know I said that in 2021? We can't afford it. When we get into government, we're not going to spend 28 billion quid from day one a year, but we're going to build up to that over the 4 or 5 years of the next Labour government if they win the election. And a lot of people are calling that a U-turn, a retreat, undermining Labour's
especially
credibility.
considering that they're now blaming, well, look, this is down to, when Liz Truss crashed the economy. Well, all right, fine, but elements of this plan were announced after that happened anyway, so you probably should have seen that coming. So I don't quite understand how they can necessarily blame the Tories. I suppose that bit is politics.
Well, it's all politics. It's pure politics. What they're trying to do, and there's actually a row emerging within the Labour Party on the front bench, which I'll get into.
Yeah.
What they're trying to do is Rachel Reeves, she's risking annoying the Green lobby, the net zero people, the Just Stop Oil people, new Labour donors like Dale Vince, who's the renewable energy tycoon, who's dropping millions of pounds on the Labour Party. She's risking the Shadow Chancellor annoying them. But she can then say, I'm doing this because I want to be responsible with the public finances. And in some senses, for sort of Middle England voters, that's what they're worried about, that Labour are going to sort of run out of other people's money, as the cliche goes, and they're going to end up with a budget crisis. So Reeves is establishing her kind of fiscal credentials as being responsible with the nation's finances. Meanwhile, Ed Miliband, remember him?
Yes.
Former Labour leader who was very much at the centre of all the climate change law.
Almost the most talented Miliband brother.
When he was a cabinet minister under Tony Blair back in 2007. He is now tweeting, oh, we are going to spend this money, don't let people tell you that we're retreating. So there seems to be a bit of a mixed message. A message discipline is key as Labour tries to rebuild its credibility.
But it cuts right to the heart of a lot of people, the kind of battle between what we can afford and whether or not we really want to save the planet. Because people will just say we should bankrupt ourselves. People like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. A lot of those people don't really care about what the rest of the country looks like and what the finances are. Excuse me, it's mainly just about let's just stop this particular issue. And now maybe Rachel Reeves has gone, well, actually, we just really can't afford.
There is that tension between spending money now on the transition to net zero, households suffering, making people install heat pumps, if you think that's the right way to go.
Forking out for
making people buy electric vehicles, which are still very expensive, if you think that's the right way to go. There's that tension. Then there's also the tension that the Labour Party faces, trying to please the two wings of the coalition it's going to need if it's going to gain the keys to number 10. And those two wings are, broadly, on the one hand, university graduates, the kind of lovey vote, if you like, in the university towns, people who, if they don't vote Labour, will vote Lib Dem.
Yeah.
The kind of people who really want Ed Miliband and co to prevail, to push ahead with this green transition, if you like. But then there's the other, more traditional wing of the Labour Party, people who wear boiler suits when they go to work. The GMB union, the Unite union, both of which have been hugely critical publicly of Keir Starmer's plans to end all new oil and gas investment in the North Sea as soon as Labour comes into office.
I can tell you, in Ashfield yesterday, where she's now Lee Anderson's seat, we did the kind of big Red Wall show from there. They, by and large, just didn't care about the environmental issues. It was really about the money in their pocket. It was about immigration. It was about the key things.
Or they thought, I find a lot of people, they're worried that we're going too fast. People want fresh air. People want their kids not to live in smog and industrial squalor, but they think we're going too fast.
Exactly.
They think a lot of wealthy people have these, what we call, kind of luxury views. It's all about them feeling superior, having the Tesla on the front drive, having the Land Rover and the little run around the back where the neighbours can't see them. So for a lot of ordinary people who really bear the biggest cost proportionately of this transition, they think Labour needs to look after them. Labour needs to look after the working class blue collar vote rather than the kind of posh graduate vote.
But it's played into Rishi Sunak's hands. He was giving a talk earlier on today, and he was saying, he made a joke about how Keir Starmer received something like 18 grand for a book of policy ideas, which presumably actually would just at some point be a manifesto. But anyway, and then had to hand the money back because he didn't have any. Whether or not that's true.
And he's also made a little move today, Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, by making the windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas companies. While Keir Starmer's trying to ban new investment in the North Sea, the Tories have reined in slightly their windfall tax. So instead of always charging the oil and gas companies in the North Sea 75% of their profits, 75% of their profits, they're now going to charge them less than 75%, just 40%, if the oil price goes below a certain level. But I've talked to a couple of big oil companies operating in the North Sea today. They're not particularly impressed. They're not going public with that now. They don't think this is going to end what is mounting now, Patrick, to an investment strike in the North Sea as a result of this government policy.
There we go. Right, Liam, thank you very, very much. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor, with On the Money. Now, as it emerges that the Syrian refugee who stabbed children in France yesterday claims to be Christian, I will be asking, are migrants changing religion to boost their chances of being granted asylum? So make sure you tune into that. That is going to be a fascinating discussion. But right now, it's your headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon. It's 4:32, your top stories from the GB newsroom. Former Cabinet Minister and close ally of Boris Johnson, Nadine Dorries, has announced she will stand down as a Conservative MP. In a statement on Twitter, the former Culture Secretary said she was stepping down with immediate effect as the representative for Mid-Bedfordshire. It follows speculation over whether she'd appear on Boris Johnson's resignation honours list, due to be published imminently. The Prime Minister says he wants the north of England to be at the heart of economic growth in the country. Addressing the Northern Research Group conference in Doncaster, Rishi Sunak said there's no route to success at the next election without the North. He also took aim at Sir Keir Starmer, warning the conference that a Labour government under who he called Sir Softy would be a disaster for both Britain and the North. Shadow Minister Bambos Charalambos has been suspended as a Labour MP after a complaint about his conduct. He says he'll cooperate fully with the investigation into the allegation. The Enfield Southgate MP tweeted, "It's right and proper that process is allowed to take place." Labour has yet to comment. And French President Emmanuel Macron has visited the city of Annecy, where a knife attack took place yesterday. He's been thanking the emergency responders who are first to the scene at a playground in the Alpine city. Earlier, he met victims of the attack being treated in hospital, including an injured British girl. 3-year-old Etty was one of 4 children stabbed. The knifeman, a Syrian refugee, had been denied asylum in the country just days before the attack in the city. And you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2580 and €1.1698. The price of gold is £1,562.30 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,560 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
That's nothing to do with you.
Oh, sorry, everybody. Yes, I'm just having a chat with Mark White there, our Home and Security editor. Apologies about all of that. Mark joins me now. Look, OK, there's loads on the agenda today. GBviews at gbnews.com. I'm just going to delve into the inbox before I get stuck into this topic with Mark. A lot of reaction to the backlash from Labour making their policy U-turn, but a lot, in fact, most of the emails are on this very topic that we're going to be talking about now, gbviews at gbnews.com, which is about the amount of people who are potentially gaming the asylum system as a way of trying to stay in a country. Gary's been on. Gary says, Patrick, I'm sick and tired of people trying to convert to Christianity so that they would say that they could be persecuted back home. We are there for the taking. And it's on this issue. It's on this issue that I really want to get stuck right into now, because we're going to talk about this horrifying knife attack in France yesterday. A warning that we are about to show some images that may be upsetting to viewers. The attack was carried out by a failed asylum seeker from Syria. He held a necklace with a crucifix on it and shouted, "In the name of Jesus Christ," as he stabbed 6 people, including 4 children. OK, so the images, which I'm sure a lot of you have already seen, they are disturbing. This individual running around the park. He then repeatedly goes into the park. Clearly, we will not show you absolutely everything that is available to be seen, but him going up to prams and stabbing people in there before eventually being shot and detained. But I'm joined now by GB News' Home and Security editor, Mark White. Now, Mark, we do not know exactly the nature of this particular individual. He was wearing a crucifix and he was running around shouting about being a Christian, etc. We have had situations in the past, have we not, where people have attempted to convert to Christianity as a way of being able to say, if you send me back to my home country, I will be persecuted. Is that a tactic that we are still seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing that tactic. We've seen that tactic widely used not just in this country but in other Western nations to try to bolster the chances of someone claiming asylum from being returned to their own country or being allowed to stay here. Now, it may be that this individual, he's from Syria, was one of the minority in that country who are Christian. Some 10% of the population are Coptic Christians, but the vast majority of people in that country are Muslim. What is more likely is that he has travelled to the West and at some point has converted to Christianity. We don't know that for sure, but that would seem to be more of there would be more of a chance of that being the case than him being one of the minority from Syria in that case.
There was a story that went very quiet in the wake of the Liverpool maternity hospital bombing, which was a bit of an expose, actually, about how easy it is to get involved with predominantly the Church of England in this country, if you are an asylum seeker, to be welcomed in with open arms, which, at face value, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way the religion works, and that's all great. But with it being done with a view of them knowing that they can do that in order to game the system and not be returned. And that actually is a story that I think should be raised again, frankly.
Well, that particular incident, thankfully, that device didn't fully detonate, and it detonated in the back of a taxi prematurely. So he was the only one that died. A man called Ahmad al-Swalmin, who was a Jordanian national, came to the UK, tried to claim asylum and was rejected, and then continued to fight the authorities in this country. In fact, some 6 years previous to the attack was a point when his appeal was rejected, and he should have been removed from the country at that time. You had the then Home Secretary, Priti Patel, raising this issue and saying, look, you know, this is not good that the churches in particular, the Church of England, are assisting certain asylum seekers in gaming the system in the belief that by converting to Christianity, they can then turn around to Home Office officials and say, look, you can't send me back to this predominantly Muslim country because I'll be branded an apostate and I will be martyred. So that is what prompts a lot of the conversions to Christianity. Not to say that there aren't those who genuinely welcome a conversion to Christianity. I'm sure there are some.
There is a very grey area, in my opinion, about the promotion of religion versus the promotion of a political ideology. And I think that in many cases, unfortunately, we know how the head of the Church of England feels, Archbishop Justin Welby. He thinks that things like the Rwanda scheme are abhorrent. He clearly doesn't really believe in borders and thinks that, you know, pretty much everybody should be accepted with open arms. It would follow then, wouldn't it, that they would want to do whatever they can to try to keep as many of these people in the country. But you led us perfectly on there, Mark, to another big issue here. Again, similarities with all of the cases that we've just mentioned, which is that when somebody is refused asylum or refuge, why on earth are they allowed to stay here? It is an accident waiting to happen. And if I was the parent of one of these young children that had been stabbed by this nutter in France, I would be thinking, why the heck was this guy still here? We'd said no to him. He was going to get angry. He was going to lose it. This is an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other issue that you touch on here, is not just the why are they still here, but actually the whole process of going and appealing and being refused can often, it seems, be a trigger for these individuals to then enact some horrific and violent acts on UK soil, and that is the same in other countries as well. You mentioned, of course, al-Swalmin in Liverpool, but there are countless examples of failed asylum seekers who have gone on to commit some pretty horrific acts. For instance, the London Bridge bomber, Rashid Redouane, who was a Moroccan failed asylum seeker. He then went on with two other terrorists to crash that van into people on London Bridge, then to disappear down into Borough Market and stab other people as well. An absolutely horrific crime back in 2017. Kari Saldala, you remember, he was also a failed asylum seeker. This man was from Libya, but instead of being removed from the country, he was allowed to stay because they couldn't return him to Libya because of the political situation. So what does he do? For whatever's going on in his head, decides to go into a park in the Reading sunshine, just in a period where the lockdown because of COVID had been loosened. A group of people were out there picnic in the sun. He murdered 3 men and seriously injured another 3 men. And then it's not just terrorist-related incidents as well. Numerous other instances of people, failed asylum seekers, who've gone on to commit horrible acts, such as the murder of 88-year-old Brenda Blaney in a village in Yorkshire. You remember in Thornton Le Dale. She had taken an Iranian asylum seeker under her wing, had given him a room in her house. He was a failed asylum seeker. Also had, we are told, other underlying mental issues, but strangled and stabbed her to death one day. It's just absolutely horrific. And that gets on to the third point. So it's not just about those that may be gaming the system by converting to Christianity, those that are perhaps triggered by the refusal of an asylum application. But there is this other issue as well, which I've just forgotten actually what it was.
OK, well, there we go. You've been talking for quite a while there, so I will forgive you on all of that. But I think what annoys me is this idea of lessons learned, OK, because there haven't been lessons learned. It's all very well and good now looking at this situation in France. And my initial response to what happened in France there, where this guy went on the rampage with a knife and he'd been rejected as an asylum seeker, was, gosh, we shouldn't let that happen here. And then, as you've just outlined there, it happens time and time again here, and we all seem to move on from it, and nothing really takes place. But it is a wide-open, gaping flaw in our national security that we can allow anyone to come across the channel, we can allow anyone to stay here, we can allow anyone to maybe convert to Christianity to then just bolster their chances, and then we'd say, well, sorry, we're not going to deport you, even though we are rejecting your claim. Just come here and live here for years, feeling very, very angry.
And that third point that escaped me momentarily was on the issue of the baggage that these individuals carry, and I mean emotional baggage, coming from often war-torn areas of the world. No one knows potentially what trauma these individuals may have gone through, what horrific acts they may have carried out in other countries before reaching our country, such as the young man who murdered an aspiring Royal Marine just recently, who had, we are told, murdered 2 people in Scandinavia before he came to the UK, claiming asylum, claiming to be a child and actually being well over 18. I think he was 22 at the time. So there's the emotional trauma these individuals might have gone through. There's just the fact we don't have any oversight or knowledge about who these individuals are, who they might have associated with and what they might have got up to in their own country, and whether they might come here, some of them, with actually much more sinister intentions.
100%. And this is, I think, the public's view on it, for the most part anyway, is very unsympathetic now, because you don't want to be right in the middle of another terrible attack that could have been prevented. The way I look at it is this, which is, would you let this individual into your house? And if the answer to that is no, then I don't really think that somebody else should be expected to live next door to them. I also think that if you then ask someone to leave your house, would you continue to let them stay in there? There would be consequences for that, but this is exactly what we seem to be doing. Mark, thank you very much. As ever, Mark White there, GB News' home and security editor. But yeah, yesterday's knife attack took place in the French Alps, and we're going to go live to the town of Annecy very, very soon. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now to the latest on that horrific knife attack in France yesterday. A 3-year-old British girl who was stabbed by a failed Syrian asylum seeker is, we believe, in a stable condition in hospital after undergoing surgery, which is great news, really. French President Emmanuel Macron met with emergency staff in the town of Annecy a little earlier this afternoon, and the French government has confirmed the suspect is a 31-year-old Syrian man. He tried to claim asylum in France, but it was refused last Sunday because he'd previously been granted asylum in Sweden 10 years ago. But I am joined now by the Times' France correspondent, David Chazan, who is in Annecy for us. David, thank you very much. It's great to actually be able to go, essentially, to the scene in a way. What's it like where you are now? I've been seeing very emotional pictures of people laying flowers, getting very angry, I suspect, really, because the targets here were young children.
That's right, Patrick. You can see behind me here, there's a small crowd of people there. They have all just laid flowers. It's become something of a shrine, and they're gathering here, standing for the most part in silence as a tribute to the children and their families and as a sign of support. And on Sunday, the mayor will be organising a gathering. People are going to march through the town and try to recover in a way. I think they see this as the first step towards coming back to normal, because this is a picture postcard tourist destination. We're right on the shore of Lake Annecy. Thousands of tourists come here every summer from across the world, including from Britain. It's a generally peaceful and prosperous place, and people are just stunned that this could have happened in their community. And so it's very traumatic, and they're struggling to come to terms with it for the time being, I think.
No, absolutely. I can imagine that they really are struggling to come to terms with it. A shocking incident. And to be honest, David, absolutely remarkable that we are not reporting on numerous deaths, really. When news first broke, I think, of that, we were all fearing the worst, weren't we?
Yeah, and it's partly because of the bravery of bystanders, including a 24-year-old business school graduate. He's a devout Catholic, and he's on a walking tour of cathedrals in France. He saw what was happening. He had his backpack, and you may have seen the video of him holding up the backpack, warding off the attacker, and he and a couple of other people certainly prevented more victims. And the police also intervened very quickly. They were here within 4 minutes of the first emergency call, and so they shot the attacker and arrested him. He wasn't badly hurt. He's still in police custody, where we hear that so far he's been refusing to cooperate and mainly refusing to answer questions.
OK, look, David, thank you. Thank you for your time today and for reporting live from the scene there and for giving us a bit of a flavour of what it's like on the ground. That is the Times' France correspondent, David Chazan, who is in Annecy. Now, we're going to finish this particular hour with some very different news, it's fair to say. And Diamond will present our breakfast show tomorrow for the first time in more than 5 months. Now, it's a bit of a mixed story, this, because Anne did reveal last night that she's been diagnosed with breast cancer and has had a double mastectomy.
And that was like 9:30 in the morning. But I knew then, because I'd already seen my GP, that I had to go to a breast cancer screening thing later in the morning. And I thought I would just go for a mammogram and, a couple of tests and I'd be free in an hour. And I spent the entire morning at my local hospital. They did everything: biopsies, x-rays, CT scans, couple of mammograms, everything. And in the end, by lunchtime, I was still there. And a lovely lady with a lanyard around her neck that said Macmillan Cancer Care. And I knew then that it was serious.
Oh, gosh. Well, look, you can see Anne Diamond back alongside Stephen Dixon from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning right here on GB News. And I know I talk for absolutely everybody when I say welcome back, Anne, and well done on a heroic battle as well, it must be said. But, yes, moving on from that now, there is less than 3 weeks to go, good grief, what am I going to do, until I dance on stage with the Dream Boys, who say that they are the most famous group of male strippers in the UK. I am doing it to raise money for the mental health charity Mind. I am delighted to say that you wonderful people have raised just under £57,000. Thank you to everyone who's given money. You can donate to justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christys, justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christys. I am doing it to try to raise a bit of money for the mental health charity Mind, who step in and offer urgent medical mental health care for people who maybe can't be seen by the NHS, for example. And there is a mental health crisis out there, so it would be great if we could save some lives together. Thank you to everyone who's donated. But the government has been criticised when it revealed the Rwanda plan, but guess what? Now Germany wants to copy it. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News. More on this in a sec.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain.
Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 5 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. Now, should we just be deporting anyone who fails our asylum seeker test immediately to try to avoid more situations like what we saw in France yesterday? Has the EU finally cottoned on to what we're doing? It looks as though they want to copy our Rwanda scheme. Well, there we go. I think that would mean that we should be able to get it through the ECHR sharpish. In other news, though, we're going to be talking about a big Labour U-turn. Yes, their flagship economic and environmental policy has been put in the shredder. Why? Classic. They said that they couldn't afford it. They have blamed the Tories for that, though. Or was it really that they didn't cost it properly? We'll be speaking about all of that. We're also going to be talking, of course, more about this France horror attack. That individual involved there was wearing a crucifix, was shouting about being a Christian. As we're going to hear, a lot of people, not necessarily in this case, but a lot of people are converting to Christianity on the continent and here as a way of trying to fight deportation, because they will say that they've been persecuted back at home. So could that have been part of it yesterday? We'll drill down into that a little bit more. We're also going to be talking about this. Oxfam are back at it. You know, can't charity shops just be charity shops? Why do they have to be all woke and everything as well? I mean, fresh off the back of some rather depraved incidents in Haiti, Oxfam are now telling an individual who works for them that she doesn't know what oppression is, OK, because she's straight. Yeah, OK, all right, fine. Cheers, Oxfam. Anyway, Patrick Christys on GB News. GB Views at gbnews.com. Keep piling in on your views on whether or not we should get people deported straight away if they are refused asylum or refugee status. I'm sick and tired of standing here and reporting on issues of angry people who've been denied asylum somewhere going on the rampage. GB Views at gbnews.com. Better see headlines now.
Good afternoon. It's 5:02. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom.
Former Cabinet Minister and close ally of Boris Johnson, Nadine Dorries, has announced she will stand down as a Conservative MP with immediate effect. In a statement on Twitter, she said she was stepping down as the representative for Mid-Bedfordshire. She said it had been an honour to serve her constituency, but it was time for someone younger to take the reins. It follows speculation over whether the former Culture Secretary would appear on Boris Johnson's resignation honours list, which we can now tell you has just been published, and we'll bring you more on that shortly. The Prime Minister says he wants the north of England to be at the heart of economic growth in the country. Addressing the Northern Research Group conference in Doncaster, Rishi Sunak said there's no route to success at the next election without the north. He also took aim at Sir Keir Starmer, warning the conference that a Labour government under what he called Sir Softy would be a disaster for both Britain and the north.
Halving inflation remains the single most important and effective policy goal to help people with the cost of living and sustainably increase living standards. Now, we've averted the predicted recession, but my ambition goes far beyond that. We need to grow the economy, and I want the North to be at the heart of our economic growth. We will use our post-Brexit freedoms to create the most pro-innovation and pro-enterprise regulatory system on earth.
French President Emmanuel Macron is in Annecy, or has been in Annecy, where a knife attack took place in a playground yesterday. Earlier, he met victims of the attack being treated in hospital, including an injured British girl. 3-year-old Etty was one of the 4 toddlers stabbed. She's now said to be in a stable condition. The city's mayor says he's confident about the condition of the other 3 toddlers. 2 adults were also injured. The knifeman, a Syrian refugee, had been denied asylum in the country just days before the attack. Macron has been praising the efforts of the emergency responders first to the scene. Former US President Donald Trump has been indicted on charges of retaining classified documents at his Florida estate. A source close to the case says he faces 7 charges. This is the second time Trump has been indicted. He's the first former US president to face criminal charges on a federal level. Posting on his social media platform Truth Social, Trump accused the government of election interference. He's campaigning to make a return to the White House in 2024. Shadow Minister Bambos Charalambos has been suspended as a Labour MP after a complaint about his conduct. He says he will cooperate fully with the investigation into the allegation. The Enfield Southgate MP tweeted, "It's right and proper the process is allowed to take place." Labour has yet to comment. Elsewhere, Russia's president has announced it will deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus as early as next month. Vladimir Putin held talks with his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko in Sochi this afternoon. The pair had previously agreed to plans to store Russian nuclear missiles in Belarus. They've now agreed to a date, saying the move will go ahead the first week of July. The missiles will remain under Russian command. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has abandoned Labour's commitment to spending £28 billion a year on a green prosperity plan. Instead, she says the party will gradually increase spending over the course of Parliament. Ms Reeves explained economic circumstances have changed since the announcement made 2 years ago, saying Labour now wants to commit to spending only what is needed. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back over to Patrick.
OK, let's get to some of that huge breaking news. And there's former Prime Minister Boris Johnson honours list has just been published. So we'll get some of the names, of course, from all of this. I mean, it is absolutely fascinating, isn't it? In a statement on Twitter, the former Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, who has stood down as an MP with immediate effect, has been a fervent backer of Mr Johnson, was amongst names tipped to be nominated for a peerage. She said, I have today informed the Chief Whip that I'm standing down as MP for Mid-Bedfordshire with immediate effect. It has been an honour to serve as the MP for such a wonderful constituency. The resignation, of course, now will spark a by-election. It's also worth noting on this honours list that Mr Johnson's father, Stanley Johnson, has apparently been dropped from this honours list. We are working through it as we speak right now. I am hoping that I'll be able to go to GB News' political reporter, Catherine Forster, at some point very, very shortly. And in fact, I am actually able to go to Catherine Forster right now. Catherine, big breaking news. Go on. So, look, OK, so the honours list is just dropped. Catherine, by the way, has just hot-footed it back from outside the House of Commons for us, so thank you very, very much.
I've just got out of a taxi, so I'm reading this along with you.
Sorry to pounce on you straight away, for want of a better phrase, but go on, what have you got for us?
So this has been much, much anticipated, yes. And, of course, we've just had Nadine Dorries in the last hour or so, having said this morning on broadcast, the last thing I want to do is cause a by-election, causing a by-election.
Yeah.
But a lot of names here, so just having a quick look down. OBEs, Andrea Jenkins, big supporter of Boris Johnson.
Yes.
Amanda Milling, former minister, of course. Priti Patel. Dame, now will be a Dame.
Really? OK, so Dame Priti Patel, Andrea Jenkins. Andrea's on this channel quite a lot. I'm sure we will be reaching out to her as we speak.
Knights include Conor Burns, again, a massive supporter of Boris Johnson.
Oh, OK.
Simon Clarke, who was Levelling Up Minister under Liz Truss.
Yeah.
Michael Fabricant gets a knighthood.
Sir Michael Fabricant.
So does Jacob Rees-Mogg, so we're going to have to get used to addressing him rather differently.
Oh, my gosh.
I hope it won't go to his head.
So Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Fabricant will be knighted.
They will be knighted. They will be knighted.
Well,
I'm not reading every single name.
No,
I'm reading names that we're likely... OB.
Well, arise, Sir Jacob and Sir Michael as well.
Now, Gutto Harry, who was briefly head of comms at number 10 under Boris Johnson, is getting a OBE.
OK.
It was thought that he would get a peerage, but of course he's had a big podcast spilling the beans on his time in number 10.
Well,
so that may be why he has been downgraded. Looking down for a few more names.
Yep.
Jack Doyle, he was former director of comms at Downing Street. Let me see.
There's a few obviously familiar names here as well. Just to reiterate, if you are just joining us, that it's emerged that Jacob Rees-Mogg will be knighted, Michael Fabricant will be knighted, Andrea Jenkins MP will also be given an OBE. Some of the other nominations from the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson that I'm seeing here for peerages in the House of Lords include people like Ross Kempsell and Rosenfield as well. There will be a little bit of controversy. Go on.
And I've just been handed something else. So these are peerages. So these are appointments to the House of Lords specifically. Bear in mind, originally Boris Johnson had, I think, 100 people on his list, and it was whittled down to 50. But these are the big ones, if you like. So amongst those, we've got Ben Houchen, who is currently, of course, Mayor of the Tees Valley.
Yes.
Very influential. Ross Kempsell, he was formerly a political journalist, and then he worked for Boris Johnson as well.
He's had a very meteoric rise, actually. He was at Guido Fawkes, and he was at a station that we cannot name before it was a station that we now can't name. And then he was in Downing Street quite quickly and was believed to be very, closely aligned with Boris Johnson's wife, Carrie, etc. So it's a meteoric rise for Ross.
And Dan Rosenfield, another one, former Downing Street Chief of Staff.
He replaced Cummings, I think, didn't he? Came in after the Dominic Cummings car crash, shall I call it that? Whatever that was, I suppose. So he's, again, someone who's... it's quite a nice gig if you can get it, isn't it? Align yourself with the Prime Minister for a period of time, it all goes wrong quite quickly, and then you find yourself with a lifetime peerage as an allowance in the House of Lords. I mean, it's nice work if you can get it.
It does seem this list of, I mean, obviously it's quite a long list that we've gone through, CBs, OBs, etc.
Yeah.
But in terms of peerages, this seems to be very, very short.
Very short. And his father, of course, not on there. That caused a lot of controversy. There was talk of him wanting to have his own father put in the House of Lords. That doesn't appear to.
Well, Number 10 intervened in that because
no.
I think they thought... But, of course, it didn't stop him. A couple of years ago, he made his brother, Joe Johnson, who used to be Universities Minister, a Lord. So his brother made it to the House of Lords, but sadly for Stanley Johnson, it seems that it is not to be.
Well, there we go. And it's worth noting as well that when it comes to Nadine Dorries, she has resigned with immediate effect as an MP, a Conservative MP.
She has.
She stood down with immediate effect as a Conservative MP for Mid-Bedfordshire. That will trigger a by-election. She currently has a majority of somewhere around the 24,000 mark, but as Tom Harwood, our political reporter, our deputy political editor, I should say, said earlier on this show, the Tiverton by-election had a very similar majority, and if Labour and the Lib Dems strike a pact in Mid-Bedfordshire, then they could win. This is, of course, all hypotheticals. If this happens, then that happens, etc. But quite bad news, really, I think, for Rishi Sunak. Some would say a bit of an obvious two fingers up to Sunak from Dorries.
Yes. I mean, this is really what they wanted to avoid. Rishi Sunak has sort of put this on ice for quite a long time because obviously it was going to trigger some ill feeling. And what he didn't want was by-elections that the Conservatives, let's face it, at the moment, if the polls are to be believed, are likely to lose. Now, she was on the list. Originally, the plan had been she and Alok Sharma as well, whose name I haven't seen, have been taken off. The original plan was, say you're going to have a peerage, but you can carry on as an MP till the next general election and take your peerage up at that point. And then the parliamentary authority said, no, that is not appropriate. If you want to take it, you've got to take it straight away and stand down and trigger a by-election. So my understanding is Nadine Dorries' name was taken off yesterday, along with Alok Sharma, to go back to the parliamentary authorities for further vetting, which might look like quite a clever wheeze, but something's obviously changed this afternoon and we're not clear, and Nadine Dorries is not saying why this morning. She said, absolutely, last thing I want is a by-election. This afternoon, there's going to be a by-election.
Well, this afternoon there's going to be a by-election, yeah, and I can report that apparently Nadine Dorries has been removed from the Conservative MPs WhatsApp group. This is doing the rounds at the moment. So this is the realms of politics that we are now living in. But this is big for Boris Johnson as well, of course, because Boris has now got his resignation on his list through there, so some of his people that he cares most about will get their honours, etc. And he can kind of draw a little bit of a line under the old Boris Johnson era. I think it is fascinating because for all of the talk about Boris making some kind of mistakes, etc., he's been very loyal to the people who stood by him over Partygate. He's been very loyal to a core team of advisors. He's been very loyal to a group of people that actually went into bat for him, not least Priti Patel. Jacob Rees-Mogg of this parish, our very own, is going to be knighted. Michael Fabricant has been unwavering in his support of Boris Johnson. Can I just say as well, both privately and publicly, Michael Fabricant has been a huge backer of Boris Johnson and is, by the sounds of it anyway, being rewarded with a knighthood, from what we can gather. I am joined in the studio now by two familiar faces as well who've hot-butted it in. This is great.
We're not on the list.
I was just going to ask.
I'm still going through it in the vain hope that we might be. I'm not bothered about him, but that I might be on.
Yeah, no, exactly. I didn't want to ask because obviously this has just dropped, so I haven't been through it all. So you could have been knighted. You could have been one I wouldn't have known.
But, yeah, that would be cruel, wouldn't it? A husband and wife, only one of them. That would be a real way to twist the knife, wouldn't it? Not to give the knife, not to give the award to one of us.
What do you make? Go on, what do you make of what you've seen so far, then, Esther and Phil?
Well, look, I think in terms of the list, it's in many respects, it's quite predictable. Boris is very loyal to people who are very loyal to Boris, and I don't think that's an unreasonable situation. I mean, that's what these things happen to be.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's, whoever the Prime Minister is when they leave office, they tend to reward the people who have been the most loyal to him. And, you know, people like Jacob, for example, who is very well deserving of it. I mean, I suspect Boris wouldn't have become Prime Minister without the help of Jacob.
Phil, he absolutely wouldn't have been Prime Minister without the help. I mean, because he helped him, he supported him, he went out and championed him with the association of members, all who love Jacob. He held dinners, didn't he, on a nightly basis to get all the MPs round. He was his biggest champion. So I would say, without doubt, Boris would not have been leader without the support of Jacob Rees-Mogg.
In fact, Jacob probably sacrificed his own career in order... He would have had a good shot of becoming leader. He sacrificed it to support Boris.
There was a time, really seriously, where there was big talk of Jacob running himself, wasn't there? And he kind of had the campaign ready to go.
He's always said no, but I've always thought, well, who knows? Who knows what the future will hold? And who knows for Jacob? And maybe Jacob will be thinking of other things. But he was absolutely loyal and really worked. I always said, didn't I, worked harder than Boris for Boris to become Prime Minister.
That's not difficult sometimes to work harder than Boris.
There you are,
I suppose the most intriguing thing of all, though, is about Nadine Dorries, isn't it?
So, yes, thank you for crowbarring this in now. What's going on there? Go on.
Well, you could only think, you know, she's not on the list, it was going to go back to vetting. Do you remember that story broke this morning? Alok Sharma wouldn't be on the list, probably not for by-elections, various other reasons. So you can only think, was it a fit of pique that she's left, that she wasn't? Or is it that if she wasn't an MP, she could quickly get on the list in time? Which way was it? She said she didn't want to force a by-election, but that's where we're going. And then other people have said, is she so loyal to Boris that her coming out of her seat provides a vacancy for Boris, who would be in a tight marginal seat should anything go wrong, for him to go there?
Well, there's a by-election, though, isn't there? So Boris can't stand in a by-election. He's already in Parliament. So.
But but could he come? I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, do you? It's the stranger things that happen.
The ducking and diving that could take place in order to maybe try and get him a safer seat.
Couldn't she choose her timing a little bit on
She said she's resigned. No.
Yes, but when would it be to be? How many weeks is there to go?
Well, it'll be the Conservative Party in Parliament will move the writ for the by-election.
I'm just thinking there could be more manoeuvring.
Watch this space. But how much of a loss will it be, Nadine Dorries?
For who?
For the people of this country.
For the people of Mid-Bedfordshire or for the Conservative
For the Conservative Party, really.
Well, no, look, it's a joking aside. It's a serious situation because it creates a by-election. And, you know, Nadine's got a very safe seat, 24,000 Conservative majority. But as we all know, there are no such things as safe seats in by-elections. Yeah,
what do you make of people like, for example, Ross Kempsell, who've been honoured as well, who were, you know, advisors and key advisors, people behind the scenes there, I suppose. That's just the normal way about things, isn't it, really? I think.
Yeah, and look, I think it's appropriate that people behind the scenes get honoured and rewarded. You know, it shouldn't always be people who are in front of the camera. Often the people, lots of people...
Well, is this probably a good enough time as any to have a conversation about the honours system in general? I mean, do you think it's worthwhile as a system? Is it a slight jobs for the boys thing, if you excuse the pun there, really, or not?
Well, it's not entirely meritocratic, is it?
No.
I think we can all agree. We can all agree about that. But you know, that doesn't mean to say that it's worthless as a look, all of these people have worked hard in the service of Boris Johnson, and that is a perfectly respectable thing. You know, if you didn't have people who went out and were loyal to the Prime Minister, you'd have anarchy.
Yeah, I think what people have questioned, though, is the number that have come in over the last couple of years, because there's been quite a few resignations. Yeah. And I think you've got to have the integrity of the second house. And people are saying, well, who's going in there? You know, are they just a favoured few? How have they got there? And that question's being raised, as I said, because we've had a couple of resignation honours list in a very short space of time. So I think you asking that question, who goes in there, is really, really important. The fact that this list is now shorter, I think, is good. Actually, I think it's good that it's a shorter list.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, obviously, it's clearly not without the controversy. I mean, the Nadine Dorries thing is the fascinating one. We'll wait for a bit more detail, really, because clearly something has changed there in her mind. I mean, she was actually doing media rounds a few hours ago saying that she wasn't going to resign, really. She didn't want to cause a by-election. She's not telling us what has happened. behind the scenes. It's like...
I think Ben Houchen there, or Houchen, I think he has done a phenomenal job as the mayor there in the northeast. I think the sort of economic turnaround of that region, of which he was instrumental in, I actually think that's very worthy. So, as I said, they've all done different things. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, a lot of these people are loyal to Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson has repaid their loyalty by giving them something in the honours list. And people might think that that's a bit seedy, but that's politics. Politics is a grubby business on the whole, and that's just the way politics works.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the system. It's all very well. I mean, I can ask a kind of broad brush question about it. I mean, this is not new, right?
No, this has been going on for as long as the honours system's been in place. So let's not pick on Boris Johnson and the people who will get an honour from Boris Johnson. This is no different to what's happened with any previous Prime Minister.
Catherine Forster, our political guru, is kicking me under the table here. What's going on?
Well, that's footsie.
I think these people are not getting peerages. They're not going to the House of Lords, but I think there'll be some raised eyebrows. So Martin Reynolds, who was Principal Private Secretary to Boris Johnson, is getting an Order of the Bath. Now, it was he, cast your mind back, May 2020, organised the Bring Your Own Booze to the Garden in Downing Street during lockdown, and then subsequently said, we seem to have got away with it.
Yes.
Also, another one...
which didn't end well, did it?
Shelley Williams-Walker has got an OBE. She was formerly head of operations to Boris Johnson. Now, allegedly, she was in charge of the music, the notorious Downing Street party, the night before Prince Philip's funeral. Now, Boris Johnson wasn't there. He was at Chequers, but swings were broken, wine was brought in, carry cases, and apparently she's dubbed DJ SWW.
Really? OK, so those people who were...
Lady DJ.
Lady DJ SWS, exactly. But again, I think that does show Boris Johnson's genuine sense of loyalty.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
Because these are people who... I mean, he could very easily have distanced himself from these people. He could have thrown them under the bus. He could have said, Partygate brought me down and you were organising some of the booze and you were on the decks. But instead, he's elevating them to, not to House of Lords, but he's giving them an honour, isn't he? So I suppose that shows...
Yeah, no, Boris is a very loyal guy, and there's no doubt about it. People might argue he was too loyal to some people when he was Prime Minister. But look, I think we're all delighted that Michael Fabricant's got a knighthood for services to the hair and wig industry.
Is that what it is?
I think we're all over the moon about that. But again, look, Michael is a great guy, and he's been extremely loyal to Boris as well, and gone out to bat for him. And look, these people like Michael Fabricant, to be fair, they would go out to bat for Boris publicly.
Yeah.
When it was not popular to do so.
Absolutely.
And, the people always complain about politicians who just, they just do whatever's popular. These people supported Boris through thick and thin, and there was quite a lot of thin, and they were supporting him throughout. And it's, I think it's perfectly reasonable that Boris has repaid that loyalty. OK, all right. Well, I suppose you guys might be on the next honours list. Is that right? I think you might just stay there for me. I'm just getting something in my ear at the minute. I'm just going to ask to be repeated, if that's all right. OK, sorry, I can't quite hear what's being said there, but anyway, the Labour Party have made a major U-turn on their planned £28 billion a year investment, so we're going to be talking about that very, very shortly. But I'm just going to ask Catherine Forster to bring in... Are there any major surprises for you in terms of people who have been left off this honours list, do you think?
Well, dropped, who, of course, chaired COP26. Alistair Jack, the Scottish Secretary, had originally been in line. That hasn't happened. I think, to be honest, a lot of this had leaked, so we had a good idea about quite a lot. But I think what surprises me is there's not many peerages, not many people going to the House of Lords. Lots of honours, but at a lower level.
OK.
Potentially less controversial.
All right. Now, I think I'm right in saying that we can go to Conservative MP Bob Seeley. Yes, we can. Bob, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Right, so what do you make of this honours list? And the big controversy is Nadine Dorries resigning with immediate effect. There's going to be a by-election. Come on, what's happened?
To be honest, firstly, good afternoon to your viewers. I do find it a little bit difficult to be excited about this because fundamentally it ain't going to change much for either my constituents or many other people in the UK. Whether we like it or not, Prime Minister's honours is part of the system, as Phil just very eloquently explained, and you can like it or not. But frankly, I'm so much more for. I mean, I will go out and try to make sure we get a Conservative MP back in Mid-Bedfordshire, and thank Nadine for her very high-profile and diligent career. But frankly, we've got an election to win next year, and I'm so much more focused on that, and so much more focused and concerned about Labour's endless U-turns on almost every aspect of their policies, which proves to me that Keir Starmer is not a serious potential Prime Minister.
OK, all right. So, I mean, what do you make, though, of, a couple of the names on this? I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for example, is going to be knighted. Michael Fabricant is going to be knighted as well. I mean, are you at least happy for them?
I'm delighted. I always assumed that Jacob Rees-Mogg had a sort of endless titles and a succession of titles. So the fact that he's being knighted, I would have thought, is reality catching up with Jacob. And as Phil said, whatever Michael's contribution to the hair industry, he is a thoroughly good bloke and deserves it.
He's getting a kicking here, Michael. He's not here to defend himself.
That's a good one, though, look.
He'll be on shortly to respond to all of these very defamatory allegations. No doubt. But Michael Fabricant, of course, will be knighted. But you make a good point there, though, Bob, I think, which is that, actually, does this really matter to the vast majority of people? OK, it is news. We'll talk about it a bit. But the key issues, I think, are the ones that you've been identifying there, which is that Rishi Sunak's got to sort out his 5 pledges. The Labour Party appear to be flip-flopping all over the place at the moment, don't they? And whilst we can have a bit of a laugh about it, I suspect that the wider public, Bob, will want to see your lot cracking on with what's going on in the Channel, getting inflation down, getting NHS waiting lists down, and those are the big issues, aren't they?
Yeah, completely. And look, I get the entertainment value of Boris and indeed the entertainment value of Michael, bless him, and Jacob Rees-Mogg. And, I get the fact that a lot of people like to chat about this stuff because it's effectively fun political gossip. But look, there's an election next year. It's actually going to be an incredibly serious one. And the reality is we've got Rishi Sunak delivering on his promises. And what gets me is that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer, they're not even under any pressure at the moment, and yet they're falling apart. When it comes to immigration, they haven't got a clue. They attack us. And when we say, what's your answer? They say, well, we're not really bothered about more immigration. They're confused over the utility nationalisation. They're confused over support to extremist protests like the fact that the ones we've seen. They don't know. They haven't made up their mind over tuition fees. They wanted more doctors to stay in the NHS by reforming the pensions. And then when we did that, they were against it. And then we found out that Keir Starmer had the mother of all, private pensions or state pensions in his own separate bill. And now we find out that they are reneging on yet more of their promises. I want them to renege on their ban on North Sea oil and gas investment, because that's an absolute disaster. Let's hope they chicken out of that one as well. But the reality is they're not even under any pressure, and their policies are falling apart. And when it comes to next year, people have a choice between a Rishi Sunak who's delivering and a Keir Starmer who wouldn't know what delivery was.
Look, Bob, thank you. I always enjoy our chats, and well done as well for managing to steer that entire interview based on to entirely what you wanted to talk about, which is a real skill. So well done. It's Bob Seeley there, it's great stuff. I've just read at the bottom of my screen there that Sean Bailey has been given a peerage as well, another regular on this channel. So well done, Sean. He'll be on one of Dan Wootton's panels probably tonight, bless him, and talking about all of that. You seem quite happy about that, yeah?
Yes, absolutely delighted about that. And maybe everyone on GB News will get
one.
Well, this is the thing. Actually, maybe it'll be your turn.
You're left out. I'm left. Phil's left out. Catherine, you've been left out. Well, we're going to stage some kind of petition or protest now.
We need to, but I think it's only a matter of time before we are all elevated at some point, isn't it? I've got now former Labour MP Sir Stephen Pound. Oh no, sorry, not Sir, is it, Stephen? There you go. So what's the situation for you when you look at this? Do you think this is just cronyism and favouritism, or actually is it quite nice, Boris Johnson being loyal to people who have stuck by him through some tough times?
Well, I have to say, Bob Seeley deserves to have a dukedom
for that magnificent attempt to totally do a 360 on that interview. Absolutely, a dukedom, an earldom. He should be the king in perpetuity of the Isle of Wight. Brilliant. Look, as far as I'm concerned, this in some ways is actually quite serious. I'm sorry for Philip and Esther because, quite frankly, they deserve it. Though knowing Philip, he'd probably refuse it anyway because he can be deliciously contrary sometimes. But look, a lot of people just look at this and say, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. This is just ridiculous now. We've had so many prime ministers' resignation honours, and we're now in the situation where the House of Lords is creaking at the gunnels now. It is overloaded to such a degree that their ship is no longer seaworthy. And I think that this will, in many ways, finish it for a lot of people when they look at the House of Lords.
At least this is... Look, I've got to put it to you, though, that at least some of these honours are directly representative of an individual who won a stonky majority at last general election and not stacking it full of Liberal Democrats again.
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Don't forget that when the Liberal Democrats were, I think virtually all of them got a knighthood. I think there were two that didn't get knighthoods, and I think it's just probably because they'd lost their phones that night. But look, we didn't do that in 1997 when we had a huge majority in the Labour Party. We didn't start whacking people up into the House of Lords. But I have to say, Bob Seeley, God love him, when he was talking about Michael Fabricant, a ghost of a smile flickered across those patrician features. And you think to yourself, if only Fabricant had been in the Lords, can you imagine the ermine and the buttercup hair? It would have been, what a vision.
Fabricant's getting an absolute kicking today on here. He's not here to defend himself. I happen to quite like Michael, all right?
He's a good mate. But the fact is, he's still got 3 different hairstyles for spring, summer, and winter.
Everyone's having a massive pop at him. OK, let's veer it back to Jacob Rees-Mogg. All right, Steve. Veer it back to
bold and proud.
To Jacob Rees-Mogg now. He's getting a knighthood. Surely you want to issue a congratulatory message
many
to Jacob Rees-Mogg.
As regards the comment from Esther, as Tony Blair said, we're at our best when we're at our baldest.
Yes, very good.
Jacob Rees-Mogg is already the honourable. He's got 2 because he's a son of a peer and he's a Privy Councillor. He's an absolute gent. He's a really, really decent bloke, and he deserves everything he can get. But, I mean, again, with Bob, I rather thought that he had a succession title anyway. I'm sure he's got to be the Duke of Aquitaine or something. There's got to be something out there. Sort of the Sultan of Somerset. He has to be. But fair play to him. But I have to say, King Charles is going to have repetitive strain injury at this rate. You're going to need Penny Mordaunt holding the sword because there's going to be an awful lot of knighting going on.
OK, talk to me about Nadine Dorries then. Have you got any rumblings as to exactly what's gone on? Because it was only a few hours ago she was doing the media round saying she wasn't going anywhere and the last thing she wanted was a by-election, and then all of a sudden she's gone and there's going to be a by-election.
This is a magnificent 2 fingers, isn't it? This really is to say, this is my support. I've nailed my colours to the mast. I'm with Boris Johnson and to hell with the rest of you. I think it's an awful insult to the people of Mid-Bedfordshire. It's a shocking thing to happen because basically they're being used as political pawns in a game here. And I think they're being taken for granted. The problem is, Philip, Esther, myself, anyone who's ever been elected to Parliament knows that you have to respect your constituents. Your country comes first, your constituency comes second, your party comes third. And I think she has made a shocking mistake. It's going to be very, very difficult. I'm not gloating about this, but it's going to be a very, very difficult by-election for the Tories to hold, even with a 23,500 majority.
OK, well, yeah, I mean, Tom Harwood, our deputy political editor, was talking to me about Tiverton, and as you can imagine, Stephen, I think of little else other than Tiverton. But apparently, yes, there was a majority of roughly the same there that was overturned. Look, Stephen, thank you very much. Great to have you on and get your reaction there to the Boris Johnson's resignation honours list, as Stephen Patton there. Just before I let Esther and Phil get going, because I know you're very busy people and you have got a lot on. Yes, I mean, this is actually, I think, quite a nice thing for Boris Johnson in a way. It's done now, and maybe he can kind of move on with the next phase of his political career. Do you think, Esther? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's what he should and could do. Yeah, I think so.
I'm going to leave you something to think about, Patrick, is that we haven't yet had Liz Truss's resignation honours list yet. So we've got that. We've got that to come still.
Would you have turned it down out of interest if you were given?
Certainly not.
On this occasion, but he sort of summed you up your personality. Contrapuntal is sometimes. Contrary is his personality.
Certainly not. No.
But I'll tell you where we're racing off to. We're racing off to interview William Hague, because he's on our show tomorrow. So that's what we're doing.
Well,
so that's what we've got. The lovely William Hague. We've got Archie Norman, and that's what we're... Yes, so that's where we're going.
Fantastic. Just remind people of the time tomorrow.
till 12.
10 till 12
a.m. till
tomorrow.
12.
It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So, William, I mean, that's going to be box office. So I will let you get going because I've kept you far too long here. But thank you very, very much, Esther and Phil. Make sure you tune in from 10 a.m. There's a lot still to get through, though, here, because we're going to be talking, of course, about all of these honours lists. I believe I've got Anne Widdecombe, former Tory Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe is with me now, I think. Is she? Yes, there she is. Well, they're all out today. Good stuff. Anne, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Hope you are too. Yes, this is good stuff, and what he's done very straightforwardly, he's rewarded all the people who remained loyal to him when he was going through the whole business of being ousted from number 10. He's rewarded those who stayed loyal throughout. Nadine Dorries is an obvious one. She never, ever wavered in her support for Boris. And, of course, he's fully entitled to do that. And he's now more or less turning round to the succeeding administration and saying, "Yahoo to you."
Well, no, indeed. Look, I mean, well, I'm going to keep wheeling out the ones here about, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Michael Fabricant. Those are two big names there that have been knighted. Sean Bailey's got a peerage as well. I mean, there must be something in the water here at GB News, to be fair, because I'm waiting for mine to drop, although, of course, I think it will be thoroughly undeserved. I'm just going to read you something that's just come my way, Anne, actually, which is the Liberal Democrats have been out and about now talking about this. I want your reaction. They say it's corruption pure and simple, handing out gongs to Partygate pals. What do you think?
That is an absolute nonsense, and it's pretty rich coming from the Lib Dems anyway. I mean, they've given enough peerages over their time. But let me just say this, Michael Fabricant must have been due anyway for a knighthood. He must have been in that in that group that was due to get one. So I don't think that's so very surprising. And as for Jacob Rees-Mogg, oh, yay, is all I can say.
Well, yes, no, indeed. And for Boris Johnson, I think this shows how loyal he actually is. There are a couple of people involved in the Partygate scandal. A lady who was rumoured to have been on the DJ decks during the event the night before Prince Philip's funeral, whatever. And then there was an individual as well who was rumbled to have been talking about, bringing booze, and they thought they got away with it and all of this. Now, Boris Johnson could have looked at those people and said, "You brought me down, what you did there. I wasn't aware of what you were doing, and I've had to fend off these questions." But instead, he's given them honours. And that does say a lot about the man, I think.
Yes, it does. And as I said right at the beginning, he's rewarded those who was most loyal to him. He's rewarded those who worked hardest for him. If they made mistakes along the way, he's obviously, discarded that in favour of rewarding loyalty. It does make a pleasant change. The rather more usual thing for politicians to do is to actually turn against people.
Well, no, indeed. What do you make of Nadine Dorries? That was the big breaking news, actually, that dropped just before Boris Johnson's honours list was announced. And that was that Nadine Dorries is standing down as a Conservative MP for Mid-Bedfordshire with immediate effect, triggering a by-election. Her majority there is roughly around 24,000, so should be OK, but might not be. That will be one where maybe people were voting for her as a person. I don't know. I can see you shaking your head, Anne. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't think, for a start, I don't think it's by any means certain that the Tories will hold that seat. They are losing on a grand scale at the moment, and if they do lose that one, then the lookout for them at the next general election is even worse than is being generally supposed. I wouldn't be complacent about that one. I absolutely wouldn't. Nadine may well have dropped this administration right in it.
Why do you think she's done that? I mean, is it just her disdain for Rishi Sunak?
That may be a part of it. Really, only Nadine can answer for what she's done, but she's developing quite a career outside Parliament, writing, etc. She knows very well that she's nowhere to go with this administration, and so she may have just taken that decision and time to go. I don't know. Only Nadine can answer that. I've been in the position of having my actions speculated upon, so I'll try hard not to speculate upon other people's.
No, fair enough, Anne. Look, thank you very much, and thank you for your time, and I will talk to you again very soon, no doubt. Anne Widdecombe there, the former Conservative Tory Cabinet Minister. Catherine Forster is with me, our political reporter. I think it's probably worthwhile doing a bit of a recap. I know that this list just dropped whilst we were live on air about 15 minutes ago. You were having to digest it whilst we were on air, so you've had a little bit of a time to have a read through some of it now. Just fill us in, where are we with this Boris Johnson honours list?
So in terms of people getting peerages, going to sit in the House of Lords forever, a very short list of only, I think, 7, including the Tees Valley Mayor Ben Houchen and some of Boris Johnson's advisors, Ross Kempsell, Charlotte Owen. I think they're probably the youngest ever. They're only about 28, 30. So imagine going to the House of Lords for the rest of your life, potentially, at that age. Quite incredible. But no family members. Of course, Boris Johnson previously made his brother Joe a Lord. He would have liked to make his father Stanley a Lord. But we're told that was vetoed by Number 10. Although Number 10 are really trying to be very hands-off about this, are basically saying we went with what the House of Lords Appointments Commission recommended. And then knighthoods for some of his loyalist supporters, people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, Michael Fabricant, Simon Clarke, who's Levelling Up Secretary under Liz Truss, Conor Burns, another big ally, and damehoods for, again, huge supporters, Andrea Jenkins, Amanda Milling and Priti Patel. People that stood by Boris Johnson, even when it was clear that things were going very, very badly indeed, stood by him, the real loyalists. But, of course, what we still don't know is exactly what changed Nadine Dorries' mind this afternoon. Now, she's not on the list, nor is Alok Sharma, but they've apparently been taken off for further vetting, I think partly to avoid a by-election, but now she's resigned anyway and a by-election is going to happen, which, let's face it, the Lib Dems and Labour are going to throw everything at her. She's got a 24,000 majority, but we have seen in places like Tiverton and Honiton those sorts of majorities be overturned. So there's going to be a huge battle.
Well, and if Labour and the Liberal Democrats do some kind of deal there, which, of course, there's no talk of them doing that at the moment, but if they did, then one could understand how that Conservative seat would actually be very, very, very much up for grabs. I think it does indicate, though, some issues going on within the Conservative Party. Nadine Dorries clearly has thrown the towel in a few hours after she was saying that she wasn't going to do that. Something has happened. She says that there's been a significant development today. She's not telling us exactly what that is. But, yeah, she's just quit, basically, and stormed off.
Another name, Kelly Jo Dodge. Probably never heard of her, but she's getting an OBE. She was apparently Boris Johnson's hairdresser, getting that for parliamentary services. And also a couple of quite contentious names getting OBEs and so on that were involved in Partygate. Martin Reynolds was Boris Johnson's principal private secretary. He was the one that organised the drinks in the garden, bring your own booze in May 2020, and then said we'd got away with it. And also Shelley Williams-Walker was former head of operations. She allegedly was in charge of the music at the Big Do the night before Prince Philip's funeral, which I should say Boris Johnson was not involved in any way.
Thing. But that's also even more remarkable, I think, that these people are on the honours list, because, seriously, that does, I think, show with absolute conviction that Boris Johnson does believe that there was a stitch-up that went on, that he hasn't really got that much to account for, and that people didn't do a huge amount wrong, because he could have hidden behind them, couldn't he? Look, so that's where we are now with the latest on that. I'm bringing in Dennis McShane. Oh, no, we haven't got Dennis McShane. No, in that case, I'm going to bring in political commentator and media officer for the IA, Reem Ibrahim. Why not, hey? Dennis McShane will come back on shortly, no doubt. But joining me now, I believe, is political commentator and media officer at the IEA, Reem Ibrahim. Reem, thank you very much. We are, of course, yet to have Liz Truss's resignation honours list, and no doubt that may well include a couple of people at the IEA, but we'll have to wait and see about that. I can talk to you about that another time. But in terms of this particular list right now, what do you make of it? Some of the big standout ones there. Arise, Sir Jacob. Arise, Sir Michael Fabricant.
Yeah, and one of the big standouts was obviously Martin Reynolds. I know we spoke about that previously, but he obviously got that nickname Boozy Marty because he was well known for sort of being involved in the Partygate scandals. I think what this honours list really shows, though, is the stark differences between the ideological standings between Boris Johnson, between Liz Truss, and of course between Rishi Sunak. Their honours lists really do recognise and sort of reflect the ideological positions that they have in the party. of course, there are all of these sort of political scandals with Partygate, but fundamentally, I think this shows a huge rift within the Conservative Party. And at the moment, we don't really know which direction that party is going in.
OK, Reem. I mean, do you see this as being a problem? Do you think that there is now a problem in the Conservative Party? Has this highlighted, yet again, a key division within it, do you think?
I think, yeah, I mean, I definitely do think it does. The honours list sort of being published about a year later after Boris Johnson's resignation certainly highlights the stark differences between those ideological standings. I mean, we currently have the highest tax burden in 70 years. That's something that Liz Truss tried to change. But we also see these stark differences between the types of people that all of them have on their honours list themselves. Yeah. So people like Martin Reynolds, but also people like these sort of the questions about whether or not Nadine Dorries would have been on Boris Johnson's honours list. Those individuals were loyal to Boris Johnson. They weren't necessarily ideologically conservative, as we know with how everything went during Boris's premiership during lockdown.
That's actually a really fascinating point, because in all of this, what essentially this is supposed to do is to make sure that these people that then are elevated to the House of Lords in many cases, and that therefore when the sitting government wants to go and try to pass legislation in future, they've got people who are ideologically aligned with them. But what you're saying is a very good point, which is that these people are just loyal to Boris Johnson. They're not necessarily that ideological. Therefore, it might not be of a huge benefit to the Conservative Party to have them in there. But thank you very, very much. Look, Reem, great stuff. I'm just going to ask you to stay where you are, if that's all right, because I might bring you back on in a second, if that's OK. Reem Ibrahim there from the IEA, political commentator and media officer. I do believe that now I do have Dennis McShane. Yes, I do. Right, good stuff. Better late than never. Dennis McShane is the former Labour minister and regular on this channel. Hopefully he's about to be even more regular, because we'll get him on now. There we go. Right, Dennis, thank you very much. What do you make, Dennis, of this honours list?
Oh, it's Keir Starmer's perfect dream, I'd say. You know, he's got a few problems at the moment, and the rest of this weekend, Sunday papers are going to be going through it. You have Nadine Dorries. I mean, forgive me, I know you insulted. We all loved her in the House of Commons. Mad Nad. And that's what the Tories called her, not what we wicked Labour called her, because she just flies off the handle, and she's now given Mr. Sunak an enormous headache of a by-election in a very winnable seat. I think Labour will probably half stand down. I'd be interested to see if Richard Tice's party comes in and steals a lot of Brexit, hard right-wing, hard anti-Union votes, and there's every chance that Mr. Sunak will be facing very major by-election defeat within, the run-up period over the next year to the next general election. Wow, it's awesome.
No, OK. Dennis, stay there. Catherine Forshaw, political reporter, is with me now. Potentially a little bit of an update on Nadine Dorries and Alok Sharma in their honours?
Well, this is what the Times are reporting. It's obviously very fluid, but they are saying that they've been told that Nadine Dorries and Alok Sharma will not be getting to the House of Lords at any point in the future, that it's not just that it's gone back for vetting and that Nadine has resigned knowing that down the line she's going to get there. They're saying, or source close to Sunak reported as saying, the list is final, there'll be no additions, the list is closed, citing precedent. Once the list is sent to the King, that's it. So
well, there we go. OK, all right. Dennis, I'll bring you back in. I don't know if you managed to hear that, but that it would appear that at the moment the latest reports are that Nadine Dorries and Alok Sharma have been essentially permanently blocked from going to the House of Lords. Nadine Dorries obviously throws her toys out the pram, it would appear, and says, I'm off. The people have goodbye to the people of Mid-Bedfordshire. You can have a by-election. I mean, does this indicate that there is a problem there at the Labour Party, that maybe Rishi Sunak isn't that well liked by some?
Very, very, very much so. I mean, some of the other appointments, as everybody's saying, these are rather bog-standard Prime Minister's farewell honours list, where he rewards all his loyal servitors. No problem with that at all. I mean, I love the idea of the 28-year-old lady becoming a Lord. Joe Biden was elected senator in America when he was 29.
Yeah. OK, well, the signal's a bit bad, Dennis. I'm going to leave it there because the signal's just a little bit in and out, Dennis. But thank you very much for your contribution nonetheless. Dennis McShane, the former Labour minister. Just to fill you in, again, just a quick recap on this. We're going to have Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, Sir Michael Fabricant. Sean Bailey is getting a peerage as well, as I understand it. Andrea Jenkins MP is getting a damehood, I think. Yes, I'm just getting nodding confirmation from Catherine Forster there, our political reporter. So this is basically where we are. I'm going to go into the inbox now because there's some real love for a couple of the GB News regulars who've been named in the honours list. Michael Fabricant comes across as a genuinely nice bloke and deserving of his knighthood. This is from Trevor. And yes, there we go. There's a lot from Trevor there. Boris Honours list. His hairdresser's got an honour. That's from Adrian, who can't quite believe that. I don't think it's just Boris Johnson's hairdresser, to be fair. She is a hairdresser for a lot of parliamentary staff. Quite a lot of love as well for Jacob Rees-Mogg. People saying, well done, Jacob, great to have you in on the honours list. I'm just reading something out now that's from Andrea Rayner MP, Labour's Deputy Leader and Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, responding to Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. She says, instead of tackling the cost of living crisis, the Tories are spending their time doling out rewards for those who tried to cover up rule-breaking and toadied to a disgraced former Prime Minister. It's a sickening insult to those who planned COVID parties and held boozy lockdown bashes while families were unable to mourn loved ones, and who are now set to be handed gongs by Rishi Sunak. OK, so the line that the Labour Party are taking, quite clearly, already, and the Liberal Democrats, is this. Look, there are people on this honours list who helped to organise some kind of parties during lockdown. This is a crying shame, it's a disgrace, and they should all presumably be, flogged or something. But actually, this is a resignation honours list. What always happens, pretty much, is that people who remain loyal to an individual find their way onto that honours list, and that is just what is happening. Jubes joins me now, Michelle Dewberry, for Jubes & Co. Thank you very much. What are you going to be banging on about for the next hour?
Well, of course, we'll be talking about the whole Nadine Dorries thing,
Yeah.
the honours list. I found all that fascinating. I'll be talking today, Jacob Rees-Mogg, soon to be Sir
All right.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, yes. The police as well, do we trust them or not? Is it appropriate to be naked in public? I didn't realise it's not illegal not to be. So you can be naked in public.
Well, you shouldn't have told me that. I mean, now there's nothing holding me back.
Careful what you all wish for, right? Yeah. But I didn't realise. I just assumed, not that I've ever...
Can I ask how you did realise this? What suddenly happened?
Just because I was talking... We're doing this story in a minute in my show about two people that went to a pub butt naked, and they were served, and people didn't think they should have been served, but they can be served because it's not illegal to be
It's the
naked.
kind of thing, though, isn't it, that you've got to constantly say, it's not illegal, which normally implies something should be illegal, because if you have to keep reiterating that...
I think it should only be legal if you're attractive.
Oh, yeah.
That's an awful... I know you're not allowed to talk like that in a post-Me Too world and all that, but all of these kind of... No offence, but if you're a big old fat builder, I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. But if you look like David Beckham, then I'm all up for it. Bit of a hypocrite, I do accept. Quickly as well, do you think that you should be able to pay your mortgage from your salary before tax, or before you've had your tax? Take your mortgage out of it.
Well, I mean, it'd be great, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't. I think it'd be absolutely ridiculous, but that's what some people are campaigning for. Yes, I'll be getting into that.
Well, just if it saves me money.
But why should it... This is the conversation
I'm not calling for it. I'm just saying if you offer it to me, I'm going to do it anyway. Thank you very much, Michelle Dewberry there with Jubes & Co. It's going to be a great hour. Look, I will see you next week. Thank you very much, everyone who's been tuning in this week. It's been an absolute bumper week for GB News. You'd love to see it. I'll see you soon. Take care.
Afternoon, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The weekend promises some higher temperatures, hazy sunshine for most, but there will be some thunderstorms as well. The high pressure that's been dominating is just edging away, allowing this area of low pressure to move a little closer. And as it does so, the winds will start to waft up some warmer
more humid air from the south, and also with it the threat of thundery showers. There could be some overnight across the southwest of England. You may get woken up by a rumble of thunder or a flash of lightning. For most, though, it's still dry overnight. That cloud that's been around for a long time comes back inland across parts of the east and eastern Scotland and down towards the Midlands. Now, still in northern Scotland, it'll be a little chilly. Temperatures down into single figures, but it's starting to turn quite a lot warmer across the south, and that's going to continue through the weekend.